RSVP push legislation targeting LGBTQ America, and corporations cower in fear, pulling sponsorships and limiting diversity initiatives. Call or text, how are you bringing joy out of this bleak moment for America this Pride Month? Or are you in retreat as well?
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then we check in with the Culture Show host, Jared Bowen, back from his annual Broadway Bender. We'll get his take on a host of shows worth the trip down to the Big Apple, plus gets Jared's thoughts on the swan song for Tom Cruise's multi-billion-dollar Mission Impossible franchise. It's all ahead, 11 o'clock hour at BPR and GBH and NEPM, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. The Pentagon may rename ships and installations that honor civil rights leaders. NPR's Quill Lawrence reports that includes the U.S. Navy ship Harvey Milk, named for the slain gay rights leader.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has ordered an internal review, according to his spokesman, to make sure names of ships and bases reflect President Trump's priorities. But a U.S. official who was not authorized to speak tells NPR Hegseth has already directed the Navy to remove Harvey Milk's name from the ship that has honored him since 2016. Milk served in the Navy and later became one of the country's leading gay rights leaders. He was assassinated in 1978. The official said the review includes ships named for civil rights pioneers Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Thurgood Marshall, and Medgar Evers, suffragist Lucy Stone, labor leaders Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez, and even Harriet Tubman, who freed enslaved people and led Union troops during the Civil War. Quill Lawrence, NPR News.
The Senate is reviewing the multi-trillion-dollar spending package backed by President Trump. NPR's Deepa Shivaram reports tucked away in the bill is a provision on artificial intelligence that's dividing some Republican members.
In the bill the House passed, there's a provision that says that most laws about artificial intelligence that states have passed will be paused for 10 years. Republicans in favor of the provision say there's inconsistency in how states have addressed AI protections, and they don't want limits on AI innovation as the U.S. competes with China over the technology. But if state laws are paused, then there are virtually no legal protections against potential abuses of AI. Congress has been debating over passing federal regulation for years, but still hasn't acted. Republican senators like Missouri's Josh Hawley and Tennessee's Marsha Blackburn have vocally opposed the provision as the upper body deliberates. Deepa Shivaram, NPR News.
A Democrat on the House Oversight Committee is demanding answers from Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. He wants to know why employees fired by the Commerce Department were denied health care coverage for which they had already paid. As NPR's Andrea Hsu reports, some employees are facing thousands of dollars in medical bills.
The committee's acting top Democrat Stephen Lynch sent Lutnick a letter after hearing from fired Commerce Department employees. Hundreds were fired as part of the Trump administration's purge of more recent hires, then reinstated under court order, then fired again in mid-April when an appeals court lifted that order. Belatedly, the employees were told that their health care coverage had ended in early April, 2 days before they were fired the second time, even though they'd been continuously paying their health insurance premiums through their paychecks. Now Lynch wants to know why the Commerce Department has not honored its commitment to provide 31 days of health care coverage following a termination and refunded the premiums employees paid. Andrea Hsu, NPR News.
On Wall Street, the Dow is up more than 70 points. You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Massachusetts Congressman Bill Keating, who represents the Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard, is demanding that federal immigration officials provide more information on the increase in detentions they've made in Massachusetts. The call comes a week after masked ICE agents detained some 40 people on Nantucket and the Vineyard. On Monday, Keating sent a letter to top Trump administration officials criticizing the lack of transparency in the recent ICE operation and demanded answers from the agency on how the operation was conducted, including who had been detained and whether federal officials had made efforts to contact family members. So far, ICE has publicly identified only one individual with ties to the Vineyard. He is 29-year-old Luciano de Oliveira, who was indicted in December on charges that include rape. No other Vineyard detainees have been named by ICE since Tuesday's raid. And Massachusetts Attorney General Andrea Campbell has reportedly revived an investigation into whether the mayoral candidate Justin Hurst paid for votes in 2023. The Springfield Republican reports that city officials confirmed that a prosecutor and a Massachusetts state trooper visited City Hall on May 28th and questioned elections office staff and requested voter records related to the mayoral race that pitted Hurst against longtime incumbent Mayor Dominic Sarno. In sports, Red Sox Angels wrap up their series at Fenway this afternoon. And in the forecast, sunny mid to upper 80s today. Anything above 85 is hazy, Hutt, and Henry. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from the Skoll Foundation, dedicated to powering social innovators to transform the world. Learn more at skoll.org. And Jarl and Pamela Mohn, focusing on civil liberties, foster youth, public radio, and the arts.
Welcome to BPR on GBH and NEPM. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan, thank you. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back here at the library on Friday. Governor Maura Healey is going to join us on June 25th from 11 to noon. And the Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, will be with us July 9th from 11 to 12. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there. And by the way, we ordinarily invite people down to the library when we're here on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, in the assumption they like the show. We don't really care if you like the show.
We don't?
It's hot out, and we have air conditioning here. So you can join us regardless of your perspective on the work we do. You know, it seems like it was only yesterday. We were lamenting on the air about the corporatization of June and Pride Month. That was actually a few years ago. Sort of rainbow washing of an event rooted in the history of the riots at Stonewall late in the 1960s. But today, as you know, the atmosphere around LGBTQ pride feels different, with the federal government doing its damnedest to erase gay history, targeting trans and queer people in the military and healthcare and beyond. We just heard on the national news removing the names of civil rights leaders like the assassinated Harvey Milk in San Francisco, one of the first
Harriet Tubman,
elected gay. Let me just finish about him, one of the first elected gay people in the United States. But go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, African Americans removed, gay guys removed, Cesar Chavez removed, and I guess they're going to be all replaced by straight white men. I guess that's the
Mr.
plan.
Pillow, as you're going to talk about later.
Exit.
And so, in some of those previously big, proud, allegedly enlightened big corporations are now taking heat for pulling out of their support for the LGBTQ community, cutting their own sponsorships, scaling back diversity and equity programs within their own ranks in an effort, I guess, to appease Donald Trump. So the lines are open at 877-301-8970 in Pride Month. How are you experiencing Pride this year? What do you make of the corporate pullback? Totally expected from cowardly corporate types. Is Pride Month in your community shrinking? Or have you made the conclusion that now more than ever is it necessary to show your colors? The number is 877-301-8970.
Well, we're having the Pride Parade here in Boston, June 14th. Mayor Wu put the Pride flag up over City Hall a couple of days ago. They're having a U-Ball up in Springfield, June 6th, to honor Pride. They're going to have a parade up there as well. So there are places around here that that's happening. But they talk about in these stories about how places like Kohl's, it's a great big place. Last year, they were much more up front. They had a Pride capsule collection of merchandise. They donated $100,000 to the suicide prevention organization. This year, they haven't announced any Pride plans and didn't respond to a question from CNN about what they were doing about it. Similar story with Macy's. Last year, they were much more upfront about Pride stuff. And this year, they're supporting Pride events, but it's not making official announcements about their plans. And so they're kind of, when they're doing stuff, they're doing it in a very quiet kind of way, not a big out front way that they used to. And that's the same thing as Target. Target's doing stuff online, I guess, but the Pride stuff on display in their stores is not as big as it used to be.
You know, there was a word that was used pretty strongly by Lee Pelton, head of the Boston Foundation, yesterday, when talking about university leaders who have not spoken out. He called them cowards. These corporations are cowards or frauds. And every institution that couldn't have run faster to embrace LGBTQ issues a couple of years ago now is running just as fast in the opposite direction. And by the way, speaking of changing their position, it was not that long ago, 2019, when there was a president of the United States, Donald Trump, who was celebrating Pride Month. And now here's what his press spokesperson, Carolyn Levitt, said in response to a question at the White House, I think it was yesterday, I'm not sure, about not recognizing Pride Month. It was yesterday, actually. Here's the reporter, and then Levitt.
Congresswoman Mary Miller suggested that changing Pride Month to Family Month. Does the president have any plans on making a proclamation, or is it just going to be June this year?
Well, there are no plans for a proclamation for the month of June, but I can tell you this president is very proud to be a president for all Americans, regardless of race, religion, or creed. Unless
you're gay or black or a person or a poor person.
And by the way, he was quite effusive back in 2019.
I know he was.
Listen to this quote.
Go ahead.
This is from Donald Trump. As we celebrate LGBT Pride Month and recognize the outstanding contributions LGBT people have made to our great nation, let us stand in solidarity with those people who live in dozens of countries around the world that punish, imprison, or even execute individuals on the basis of their sexual orientation. My administration has launched a global campaign to decriminalize homosexuality and invite all nations to join us in this effort. So what happened?
I assume he decided it was in his personal self-interest to flip his position. And by the way, he's flipped a lot of Republicans with him. We've mentioned before, support for same-sex marriage in this country was in the low 70s a couple of years ago amongst Republicans. In the last 2 years, it's fallen 14 points from 55 to 41, obviously, because that's on orders of the boss.
Well, one bright note before we begin to take the calls at 877-301-8970. There is a little bit of good news, which is that the Trump administration had banned hormone treatment and medical care for trans people in prisons who have obviously no freedom. A judge has stopped that and said that they need to continue that treatment, at least temporarily. So that's something. Not much, but it's something.
You know, I want to quote one person before we speak. This is the health commissioner in Springfield, Helen Colton Harris, who said exactly how I feel. It's more important than ever, this is in Mass Live, to use our voices to help people around DEI. It is totally true. It is more important not to hide out, but to, if you believe in the cause, to express your opinion. Can I say one more thing before? You know, you added to that list. How is history going to look back on the day, yesterday, today, when Pete Hegseth said that some of the most important people in the history of this country, Thurgood Marshall, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Harriet Tubman, Harvey Milk, their names removed from these vessels because what's the line? It doesn't comply with the president's America First agenda, whatever that means.
I think we're going to have a Pete Hegseth battleship, Jim, pretty soon, because why not?
877-301-8970. Sean in Boston said, as a gay man, I don't really blame corporations for pulling back after seeing what happened to Bud Light. I'll tell you, Sean, I could not be less with you. Yes, Bud Light took a lot of hit because of the trans ad. That's one experience that damaged your bottom line, is not a justification for sacrificing what you said were your principles. And David in Cambridge says, how naive of you to think the corporations really care about gay pride. They only jumped on the bandwagon because they thought they could make money on it. For the most part, I think that is true.
Well, I think they also have a lot of gay people, trans people, non-binary people who might be working for these places. So I think it would be very difficult if you're working at a place that has that perspective on you.
Well, how do you feel? I mean, that minister, I can't think of his name, in Atlanta, who called for the boycott of Target, made the point that you're making. They have a ton of black employees. He was urging black people to boycott, and I guess supporters of blacks to boycott. How do you feel if you work there? Again, if you're an LGBTQ person, if you're a black person,
I think you feel pretty crummy.
How do you feel if you're the Secretary of the Treasury and you're a gay guy? I'm serious.
I don't know.
In this administration. Let's go to Kathy in Pawtucket. You are first on Boston Public Radio. Hey there. Hi.
Hi. Well, I get to say first-time caller, and I listen all the time. I never got to say that before.
It's one of our favorite expressions, Kathy. Thank you. Welcome to BPR. Hi.
Hi. So I own a business, and it is a business that is queer-owned, BIPOC-owned, and we don't hide that. We don't put that under a barrel, and the people who support us believe that. We're not washing anything with rainbows. We are the rainbows.
What? That's great. That's a good line. What's the name of your place?
It's called Rhodium is the brand of spirits that we make.
Mm-hmm.
It's gins, vodkas, liqueurs, and the company is called Rhode Island Spirits.
Rhode Island Spirits.
And I've had people stop me in the street before when they see me with the van and said, "My kid is gay," and I'm like, "Great, yay!" And they tell me they send them their vodka, and they support us because we are providing an opportunity to be seen, and if you can't be seen, you really can't live your life fully.
That is a beautiful. How is business, Kathy?
Well, Pride Month is pretty solid, and I have to remind people, though, that, in fact, we are queer all year.
Okay. Rhode Island, what again? Rhode Island Spirits?
Yeah, Rhode Island Spirits, the brand is Rhodium, and if we're not in your store, we should be.
Hey, Kathy, you're great. We hope you make your second call soon. Thanks so much for your call. Now, her business, she said, is prospering down there in Rhode Island. The person who owns All She Wrote Books, which is a queer bookstore in Somerville, the Sun Globe story, is saying that ordinarily in Pride Month, there's an uptick. She says there's a downturn. And I don't
and she's
quite
talking about the
understand that.
pop-up bookstores that they have at other places around this time of the year. And maybe people are afraid to put up the pop-up bookstores.
Well, you know what the line is? Smaller target. One of my least favorite expressions. I mean, it is really it's a troubling but pervasive notion. I mean, it just is.
Here's Paul from Marshfield. If Pete Hegseth, of course, Secretary of Defense, really wants to score points with his boss, Donald Trump, the ships should be renamed after Trump's kids. The SSS Ivanka, the SSS Don Jr., the Baron, and the Eric Trump. And here's another one who says, I find the stripping of Harvey Milk's name a disgusting, a disgusting slap in the face. But may I venture an alternative guess? Hegseth is actually offended that Harvey was the wrong drink last name. If the last name was bourbon or vodka, perhaps the ship's name wouldn't need changing.
In a moment of seriousness, Harvey Milk, in addition to being whatever the board of whatever it is, he was the first, I think, openly gay person
thrown out of the
public
Navy.
Office. He, in the Navy, chose to serve his country. Mm-hmm. As far as I know, he was not a woman abuser like the Secretary of Defense.
Right.
He was not a drunk like the Secretary of Defense. Yet the Secretary of Defense decides to take aim at his name and his memory and the memory of all those other important figures.
Or a dingbat sending out the war plans for the bomb drops on Yemen to like half of his friends, his wife, and everybody else. And of course, the reporter at The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg, who wrote a great piece about it. David in Boston, thank you for calling.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm a first-time caller and a long-time listener.
Very happy.
I drive Uber all day, and I get to listen to you guys.
Great.
So the reason why I'm calling is I have a trans son who's in high school, and I'm very upset with what's going on at the national level. But I'm so glad that 20 years ago, my ex-wife decided to move us here to Massachusetts because we couldn't be in a better place for him. And I hope that the retailers around here, like CVS and Target, will remember that and support people with Pride this month.
That was beautifully said for your first call. Remember, Costco, where I spend a lot of time, David, is not one of those major companies that has decided to hide out. They're actually doubling down, a phrase I hate, but in a positive way, on their support for diverse customer base and their employees. So check them out.
And David, you also make a great point about Massachusetts, because there were stories in the Globe this week about parents of trans kids in New Hampshire who are going to sell their houses and move here because they're afraid of gender-affirming care being denied their children in New Hampshire. And what's incredible is that physicians pediatricians, the physicians that care for these kids talk about how much this matters. So the government is saying something that the doctors and the psychiatrists and the people that are experts in this kind of care, that these children should get this care. The government, which is not full of experts on this, is saying you can't get it.
Can I
Too
say
bad.
one word to you? Abortion.
Exactly.
Doctors not making that decision in a lot of places
No,
anymore
abortion
either.
is not making that decision. And they've made it worse on abortion for emergency abortions. That's another thing that's happened. You can't keep up with all these things that are happening. Biden said you had to give someone, if there was an emergency medical situation and the person needed an abortion to deal with that, you had to be able to get that abortion.
Even in anti-choice states.
Yes, now that's gone. That's gone.
An anonymous texter says, what about when the libs changed Fort Bragg to Fort Liberty because they didn't like General Bragg Jim? Well, anonymous texter, the reason they didn't like Fort Bragg is because Braxton Bragg was a Confederate general. And by the way, after it was renamed to Fort Liberty, you're right about that. Hegseth and Trump renamed it Fort Bragg, but they picked another Bragg, this guy Roland Bragg, who was an Army private first class. So if you want to name bases after Confederate generals who wanted to overthrow the government of the United States, that's fine, but it's not my cup of tea, or I guess the libs, as you call them. But thanks for your text.
And it's important to remember that a lot of these naming of places and streets and statues happened during the Jim Crow era as an intimidating factor. It wasn't that this happened after the Civil War. It happened during the Jim Crow era because to scare African Americans.
Read this great anonymous text. Why do you guys do anonymous? Sign your names. We want to be able to at least know your first name. Go ahead. What is it?
So they're getting rid of names of gay people on military ships, but will be featuring the village people at the birthday military parade. Is he pretending to be straight?
By the way, the head of the village people said, which is not credible, a couple of months ago, this was not a gay anthem. I would say
because he's a Trump guy.
I would say it's a gay anthem.
Well,
would you
I
not?
think most people think it's a gay anthem, but he's had a flip in his political affiliation. Let's go to Caden in Sudbury. Hi, Caden.
Hello, Caden.
Hi, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
I'm a transgender, non-binary adult. Use they, them pronouns. I would like to point out how the Republicans keep saying that the One Big Ugly Act does not eliminate coverage for anybody. It explicitly eliminates coverage for transgender youth and adults. The government estimates that's about 400,000 people. That is a tiny, tiny percentage of the number of people who will lose coverage. That's not about fiscal responsibility. It's not about saving money. It's about fear and hate.
Well, I would like to say that there's one word you got wrong, but you didn't. I think it's exactly about that. It's not about finances and budget bottom lines. It's about attacking some of the most vulnerable people in our community. Caden, thanks for calling and sharing that with us. And by the way, you mentioned the interference in the relationship between a healthcare professional, doctor, and his or her, their patient. It also could threaten your life. Many doctors in many of these cases say gender-affirming care is critical to your existence in some cases. So it's not just like a cosmetic concern that they're interfering in. This is huge and important medical care. It's just, it's whatever. Marley in Boston, you are next on Boston Public Radio. Marley, welcome to the show. Hi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think big corporations like Target and Walmart are losing a lot of money by canceling their DEI programs. I'm a member of the queer community, and it's always a big thing when Target releases their Pride collection, and this year it's really lackluster.
Yeah.
So does that explain? So when you talk about their bottom line, I assume that means for you, you just don't shop there? Is that what you're saying?
That's right.
And do you think you're an outlier, or do you think a lot of people embrace your position, don't spend your money in places that don't support who you are?
I think I'm not alone. I think it's been going on for a while. You know, Starbucks starting with people stopped going to Starbucks. Now people aren't going to Target and Walmart.
Well, I'm Marlene, thanks for your call. I'm a huge believer. I don't care what your issue is, but you should spend your money accordingly. Don't you think that's pretty important? It's maybe the most powerful thing you have is your spending.
Well, yes, I think. Michael Curry's mentioning he hasn't gone to Target in a long time.
No, he does. I know.
In 2003, this is from a piece from I don't know where it's from. Where's it from? Oh, CNN.
No.
Activists and customers on the right attacked Target on social media for their LGBTQ themed merchandise during Pride Month. Target employees faced threats over such items as bathing suits designed for transgender people, and the company removed them from the stores. And then there was people boycotted the stores, and there was a drop in sales. And also lawsuits from Republican.
We discussed this at the time, and a lot of people were texting us saying what the first half of what you said was there were threats to employees. Mm-hmm. So essentially what Target said in that situation, rather than work to protect those employees, what we're going to do is capitulate to those who threaten. Isn't that what they did essentially?
I would say that is yes. I would say that is what they did. And as I said before, they have some stuff this year, but their merchandise is smaller, displayed less prominently. They have more stuff online, but I guess they don't want to have it so proudly in the store.
Can you imagine I know this applies to so many things we talk about every day. Can you imagine living with yourself when you theoretically believe in something and you believe that you're a principled person and you revise or your public persona, your public standing out of fear of bullies and bigots?
Well, but it's like we're going backwards. This is 2025. When did we pass the first gay rights laws in Massachusetts? Was it in the 80s or the 90s?
I think it was the 90s.
When everybody was...
Our friend Arlene Isaacson, one of the incredible lobbyists of our lifetime.
I was at the Herald then, going up to the State House when they're trying to pass this bill, and you had these lunatics out there.
Remember that senator handing out those little booklets?
I do remember the senator. There were these pictures of it was basically gay pornography, and they were really well worn. It really got a kick out. The little edges of the pages were all turned up. You thought, boy, you must have spent a couple of hours going through this little booklet on gay pornography, which I thought was a very interesting little situation. Okay, we are talking about Pride Month here in Massachusetts and around the country. You're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. If you want to join the conversation, our number is 877-301-8970, 877-301-8970.
In Kenya, climate change has been making it harder to grow crops. Some Kenyans think genetically modified seeds might help, but opponents urge caution.
It means as consumers and as farmers, we lose our right to knowing what we are eating.
GMOs in Kenya, next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Maine Maritime Museum in Bath, offering Burnt Island Lighthouse adventure cruises. Visitors can explore a historic lighthouse on a pristine island off the coast of Maine. MaineMaritimeMuseum.org. And the Cape Playhouse in Dennis Village, opening June 4th with Buddy, the Buddy Holly story. Audiences can relive the music and magic of the legend. Tickets at capeplayhouse.com.
Welcome back to BPR on GBH and NEPM. Jim Browdy, Marjorie, and live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're back here Friday. Governor joins us for an hour to take your questions on June 25th. That's 11 to noon. And the Attorney General has to skip June, but she'll be here on July 9th, also from 11 to 12. Take your questions. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about Pride Month in 2025. How are you celebrating? What's the environment like? How are you navigating this political moment as the federal government attacks any identity that isn't white, male, straight, and spray-tanned orange? Are you hiding out, or are you being even bolder than ever? Give us a call or a text at 877-301-8970. Allie in Western Mass, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Sure.
I'm calling about a couple things. I'm a person who has been out in queer for most of my life. I'm 50 years old, so I can clearly remember a time when there was no issue of corporatization of Pride, right? Like it was not to the benefit of companies to associate themselves with Pride. And when they started joining and promoting and sponsoring, it came as in a good way, because there was all of this visibility and normalization and this great sense of like celebration around that. But there was also a cost associated with that. And one of the costs, I think, was that this real sense of a performative nature of allyship came up.
That's a great
So
way to put
I've
it.
always felt like if corporations want to be part of Pride, they should need to back that up, not with just a float and, giving out rainbow flags, but with their policy. Like, are they supporting their LGBTQIA plus employees? Are they giving money to organizations that should support the LGBTQIA plus community? I don't think somebody should be able to be in Pride if they're playing both sides in political contests and supporting people who are harming our communities. And I guess I feel the same way now as those companies are pulling back and removing themselves and removing their support and allyship. Then individuals who consider themselves allies need to join us in boycotting those companies. We need to part of allyship is not going to Target, is not supporting a company that is harming the people who you claim to be allied with, who you want to support. So I guess the performative issue comes up in corporations. It comes up in relationships and friendships and families. And this is a real opportunity for people to demonstrate their allyship by saying, if you're a corporation that's taking your rainbows off your websites and not showing up to support the LGBTQIA plus community anymore because it's not popular with this administration, I'm not shopping there. I'm not giving you my dollars. And I truly believe that the vast majority of this country wants to support the LGBTQIA plus community. And if we put our money where our mouths are and where our rainbow flags and our rainbow stickers are, we could have an impact.
I wish I had said what you said. Allie,
Yeah,
that was
that
fabulous.
was,
Call us again. That was really spot on.
Really good.
Here's an anonymous texter has a wonderful idea. We're talking about all these civil rights leaders, LGBTQ people, black pioneers, etc., taking their names being taken off military vessels by Pete Hegseth. Here's an excellent idea that I think everybody could agree on. How about they just rename these vessels the Party Boat after Pete Hegseth? That is actually that could be a bipartisan kind of thing. I like that a lot.
Michael in Woods Hole, thank you for calling.
Hi, Michael.
Hey. First-time caller.
Thanks.
I'm calling to let you know that there are more Pride events in the Cape than ever before.
Wow.
And Woods Hole, for one, is having its first ever Pride event. I've got an echo on this. I'm sorry.
It's our fault. Just keep talking. We're fine on this end, Michael.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Okay, I'll just keep talking.
Please.
Okay, and so the institutions at Woods Hole are very supportive of the LGBTQ community and their employees, but they could not fund the Pride because they're afraid of their own, denial of funds.
Yeah.
So the group has been having things like queer Zumba to raise money to put on this Pride. So they will be on this Saturday, the first time ever, Woods Hole Pride and Picnic and Parade, and the town of Falmouth on the 13th is sponsoring officially a Falmouth Pride. They've got the banners on the Falmouth Town Rec Center, and on the 14th there's Martha's Vineyard Pride in Oak Bluffs, and you can do it as a day trip. You can take the ferry over, and the parade is at 3. And there's also, for the first time, Lower Cape Pride. That's also going on for the first time. So there are just a myriad of Pride events scheduled in June all over the Cape.
I'm so glad you called, Michael.
What's that? What are you going to say, Michael? What did you say at the end there?
I was just going to say, speaking for myself, I'm like a little afraid. I've been in a lot of prides. I've been in New York prides for decades and things. But I'm like a little afraid that someone, they're going to be spying on me at one of these events and then ICE is going to come and get me. It's just, I don't feel, personally as relaxed about it as I have in the past.
Yeah, I have to say, I totally understand the fear, though I'm not in the position you are. But I have to say, from this one phone call, you sound like the kind of person who's going to dress it and be there. And
Yeah,
I
good
admire
for-
that.
good
Michael,
for the
thanks
Cape.
for the dates, too.
I mean,
We
that's a
appreciate
lot
it.
of stuff going
That
on.
is.
I
First
really
time ever in
appreciate
Woods
that.
Hole, he said, too, which is pretty great.
And then on the other hand, we have Jenna, who's from Rochester. She says, I live in a very red town in a very red street. I support LGBTQIA+ community all year, though we're more overt in June, flags on our gate, mailbox cover, etc. But sadly, we need to buy lots of these things because they get stolen.
You know, let me repeat what I said before. Until Trump did a 180 on his alleged support for pride and gay people, the pretty significant majority of Republicans, self-identified Republicans, supported same-sex marriage. But as we know, many of Trump's supporters, he says jump, they say how high. And now that he's on the other side of the equation, as I said, 14-point drop in support in just a couple of years.
Trump was pro-choice for most of his life. Trump supported Caitlyn Jenner when he was, I forget if it was when he was running for the first time or not, but he supported Caitlyn Jenner. So.
Hey, Ruby in Northampton, you only have 30 seconds, but we're glad you called. Thank you. Quickly, please.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Pleasure.
With my time, my 30 seconds, I would love to just talk about that in our support for the queer community, it's essentially very important to support the Palestinian cause. And one way you can do that right now is paying attention to the Freedom Flotilla, which is arriving hopefully soon to Gaza with activist Greta Thunberg on it.
That's right.
And it's currently off the coast of Greece.
Hey, Ruby, you should stay. Well, you can stream us if you can't hear us on the radio. In the 1 o'clock hour, we're going to have two local Palestinian entrepreneurs joining us. I think you'll be interested in what they have to say. And thanks so much for your call. We appreciate it.
Okay, we are out of time, as Jim has said, but thank you very much for the calls and texts. After a quick break, we're going to talk with the Culture Show's Jared Bowen. He's fresh off a Broadway bender in New York City. He's also going to tell us about Tom Cruise's latest Mission Impossible installment and Donald Trump's new official poster. He's scowling big time. He doesn't look happy. You're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, Nemr. He's a Lebanese-American comedian credited with pioneering the stand-up comedy scene throughout the Middle East. And he's on a global mission to make everyone laugh at the same joke. He joins us ahead of his show at the Wilbur. Plus, we continue our countdown to 2026 with a look at the role Somerville played in the American Revolution. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Burton's Grill and Bar, offering catering for events from corporate meetings to family gatherings, with customizable meal options available for takeout and delivery. Burton'sGrill.com.
And Polar Beverages, family made since 1882, founded in Worcester, Massachusetts by Dennis Crowley, offering a range of sparkling seltzers, mixers, and dry sodas. Product information and locations at polarbeverages.com.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan and Jim Bradley. We're live at the library. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back here at the library on Friday, Governor joins us at the library for an hour on June 25th, 11 to noon. Attorney General Andrea Campbell joins us at the library July 9th for 11 to noon. Joining us now at the library is Jared Bowen. He's GBH News Executive Arts Editor and host of The Culture Show. Airs daily here at 89.7 at 2. And for our friends in Western Mass, that they can get their dose of Jared and Company Saturdays at 7 p.m. on 88.5 NEPM. Hello there, Jared.
Hey there, great to be with you.
Hello, Jared Bowen.
Good to see you too.
So let's start with the new official portrait of President Trump. We're going to put it up on the screen there for people that are watching on YouTube.com.
Oh,
He looks pretty ticked off to me. He looks like he's.
I love the shading, the look. I love the whole thing. It's very inviting.
Yeah. J.D. Vance is smiling right next to him, but the president is not. So
of course, this is the official photograph that you see in embassies and you see in government offices and federal buildings, all across post offices, all across the United States. And this is the image that the president wants you to have of himself, with this very dark background, with half of his face shaded. I think, interestingly, the ear that was allegedly grazed by the bullet in Pennsylvania is completely covered up.
That's a great point. I didn't even think of that.
We saw how that was trotted out with the bandage and whatnot during the Republican National Convention, and there is an absence of the American flag behind him. Of course, he's wearing the pin, but this is the first presidency in quite some time where we haven't seen the American flag. But this is the image that he wants you to have, and he's very serious. He's not smiling, and this is.
Did you see the picture of the alternative that he was considering two at the end?
No.
It came down to this one and the one where he's giving people the finger, and they decided that they'd go with this one.
Well, he does look like he's pretty mad. So, Jared Bowen, a lot of us have listened to Mark Maron for many years now. He's decided he's...
Wait, can I just say one thing? I said allegedly about the grazing, because we were just talking about this. That has not moved forward that we have seen, the prosecution and the investigation into that shooting.
Well, not only the shooting of the president, he killed somebody. He killed that firefighter who was, I don't know, Jamie will check out what the status is. It's a very good point. I don't know what Butler, Pennsylvania, is that where, I think it was Butler, Pennsylvania. In any case, let's move on to Mark Maron. We have sound, Margaret.
Yeah, we do have sound, and I'm just about to play it. He's had a podcast for a comedian, and then he kind of revived his career by doing this podcast and interviewed people like Bruce Springsteen and Barack Obama. We're going to hear a little bit of Barack Obama and Robin Williams and Amy Poehler in this clip from Mark Maron. Here he is.
I know, drinking is just drinking in the mindset.
No, I think it's trying to fill the hole, and it's fear, and you're kind of going, what am I doing in my career? And you start thinking, you know what would be great at this point? Rehab.
When I ran in 2008,
yeah,
there were those posters out there, hope, and change, and those are capturing aspirations about where we should be going.
But what is the perception of women? Why do you, how do you feel, where do you stand with being a woman in comedy?
Well, I will say that I want to clarify that I was never felt sexualized. Like I wasn't some hot number.
No,
in the
I know
comedy
what you mean.
scene,
So I think a lot of people are going to miss him. I listened to him a lot. He was great.
Well,
he's there till September, I should say. He's not gone yet.
And people should know that he was really the one who helped launch this whole notion of what podcasts could be and how they could be a business. He started off by basically talking about his life, how he was disenchanted by the treatment of fellow comedians to him. He was disenchanted by his divorce, and he started talking about his relationships. But then he started bringing on other comedians and people he knew, and then it became about them, and it became these conversations with them, and then it ballooned into this major force where, you can lure President Obama into your garage to have a conversation in this podcast, which of course put him in another sphere. But 1,600 episodes, legends like Bob Newhart and Bruce Springsteen, and of course the president, Robin Williams. They're known for re-releasing their podcast after somebody dies, and he puts it in more context. But I think it's also interesting that he has said that after doing 2 of these a week, or at least releasing 2 of these a week for 16 years, he's burnt out, and he said that he and his producer are utterly satisfied with the work we've done. By the way,
you buying that? By the way,
I do.
2 a week. And how old? I looked him up. He's 61. There's more to this story. You don't think there's more? He's given this WTF.
He wants to do something else.
What is that exactly?
Granted, it's 2 a week, but if you think of the late night shows hosts who
they're
have stepped
exhausted.
down, but that's after 5 shows a week, and usually they're taping 2 shows on a Thursday so they can have Friday off. I understand that, because clearly there's a lot of preparation he does to be able to sustain an hour-long interview, typically one-on-one. We all know this is a lot of work.
Let me do some math for you. So he does the incredibly burdensome 2 hours a week. I think I do a radio show with you, actually.
I do,
How many hours a week is that?
15.
How do we do this?
I don't know,
Jim. It's unbelievable. Oh, by the way, even you have a radio show.
By myself,
That's a
Monday
mere
through
5
Thursday.
That's
hours a week. Really. By the way, I'm not faulting
you.
You should do whatever you're comfortable with. I'm just saying, if you're 61 years old, the show's this successful, something else going on. I have a quiz
Jim
for you.
is known as Super Duper Man
Thank
around
you.
the office.
No, actually, I'm the only person who's ever called myself that, but that is correct. Okay, here's a quiz. You say Mark Maron was one of the pioneers in podcasting. Who made the first podcast ever?
Super Duper Man?
I have no idea.
He's a friend of all of ours. Of course, you don't know this?
I do not.
Chris Lydon.
Oh.
First podcast ever.
Oh my God! Yeah, what did he call it? He had I forget what he called it, but you're right. He did have a podcast when he lost the radio show.
Didn't have a podcast. Did have a podcast. The first ever podcast was made by Chris Lydon, our former colleague, BUR here, etc. Okay, I have. What are you going to say?
Well, because I also
open
think
source.
that you kind of have to have.
Oh, I didn't know what you meant. That's the name
that
of the
was
thing.
open source. Yeah.
Okay,
but
go
I think if you have it in you, and we all have it in it, this is what we do. grown up as journalists too.
Yeah.
At least two of us. I know
Yeah.
you did a lot.
Just
you have a
me.
multifaceted
Yeah.
career
Thank
in
you.
history.
You recovered
That's right.
somewhat well, yes.
We had to go find the people to interview. In Jim's case, they came to him.
They just get delivered to a set every single day.
Oh,
But no,
that's
you
the
do this
beauty of
because
it.
you love talking to people, but you did this as a lawyer too. You talk to people. He was a stand-up comedian. This wasn't what he did before this.
Yeah.
So I think it's not necessarily in his DNA. And also, there's credit in leaving the party before you
Well, I
stay
agree with
too
that.
long at the party, which
Yeah.
is when you know that you're burnt out, you're not new and fresh anymore, and you're not unearthing great things.
Most of the commenters on the layoffs at GBH said I should leave the party. And the Globe story said I should leave the party immediately. Self-leave the party. Okay, I am probably the only... Has anyone not seen a Mission Impossible movie besides me? Anybody? You
haven't seen any of them?
About 4 or 5. I'm so proud of all of you, to be honest. That
They're
way.
good.
There are 8 of them. I've never seen it. The only reason I would ever go is because he does his own stunts. Who else cares? Here's a clip from the latest and final Mission Impossible movie. It's called Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, whatever that means. Here are a group of intelligence operatives discussing the seemingly impossible exploits of Ethan Hunt. That, of course, is Tom Cruise.
This can't all be true.
Nope.
Every word. He gassed a security briefing at the National Intelligence Directorate.
He arrived in the form of Mr. Kittredge's aide.
And left as Mr. Kittredge, I believe.
Oh, I love when people speak like that
You know,
in movies.
Before you answer this, Jared, I love the reviewer who said, this is a New York Times review, says this movie was ridiculous, outrageous, and made no sense, but I loved it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you have to calibrate your expectations. I can't believe in 30 years you haven't seen
Oh my
any
God.
Mission Impossible
How
movies.
about the Top Gun movies? Did you see those?
None.
Oh.
Even the first time?
Oh.
None.
The second
I
one was
saw
really
Risky
good, too.
Business like 80
Risky
years
Business,
ago.
yeah, that was
that
80,
him?
yeah.
Jumping on the
Yes,
couch?
that was him in his
Okay.
underpants.
Okay, his underpants.
Yeah, the other ones were really good, too.
Wait a second. How many Mission Impossible? I bet you kidding me. How many Mission Impossible movies have you seen?
I've seen at least 2.
No, you haven't.
I have. I've not gone to the movie theater. I've seen them on TV.
Oh, okay.
They're kind of fun. You know, you're hanging around on a Friday night.
Well, I grew up loving movies and I grew up loving blockbusters. And Tom Cruise, this is what he's just settled into now. He just knows how to make a blockbuster film that has a lot of razzle-dazzle. It doesn't have to make a ton of sense, although this makes a little bit of sense because in this film, it's the second part of the last one from a few years ago where he's chasing down the Entity. Well, the Entity has caught up with the times because I remember a few years ago, the Entity is basically AI that's taking over the world. And slowly it's I don't even know how it's working, but it gobbles up the codes to be able to control the nuclear armaments. And
That's right.
The last few remaining nations, like the UK and the US, that's what it's moving toward. And he needs to stop the Entity by plunging down into the sea into a long sunken submarine and then going up onto a biplane where he did his own stunts. And it's just entertaining at the end of the day. You just sit down with popcorn and soda.
Yeah,
you don't have to think.
So he really hangs on to the wings of the airplane.
You can see it. It's a small airplane.
Yeah.
It's not a big airplane.
It's a biplane.
Oh, are you going to do it because it's a
I am
small
not.
airplane?
No, I'm not going to do it. I am not going to do
He
it.
didn't get on a JetBlue flight.
No,
and
he
just
did
walk out
not.
under the wing.
No, he's not doing that. They're taking off from Logan, but they're good. The Top Gun things are really good too.
Yeah, they're really
Val
fun.
Kilmer, who just died a few months ago, he was great.
Well, I think it's interesting because for a while he was doing. You remember he did films like Rain Man and Magnolia, and so he was treading into dramatic territory a little bit. And I think there was even an Oscar nomination.
Rain Man.
He was
Dustin
really
Hoffman.
good in Rain Man.
He was?
Yes, he's the guy that kept repeating everything all the time. He was on the Asperger's syndrome. They went to Las Vegas, and he could figure out all the cards and all that kind of stuff. Where's Judge Wapner? Judge Wapner 4. Judge Wapner 4.
That's right. All those lines that came out of it.
He keeps repeating these things. But that was Dustin Hoffman.
That was Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah.
Tom Cruise was a young man who had to walk him through
Was
it.
this-
But then
they were brothers, weren't they? I think so.
I think so. I can't even remember.
Yeah, brothers. John knows everything.
I don't even
Thank
remember.
you, John.
John Voight and Dustin Hoffman. I didn't even know Tom Cruise was even...
That's you're talking about a
What am I
different movie.
thinking?
That
Oh,
was
Midnight Cowboy?
Jim.
Whoops, sorry.
Get with the program.
When's the last time you went to the theater?
I believe I saw the Titanic, the original. No, I didn't see the movie. I
The
saw
original?
the Titanic, actually.
Yeah, we went and saw. We went and saw the
Okay,
Titanic
enough
Expedition. Did
already.
you see the Titanic Expedition?
Yeah, exactly.
It's almost
What
gone.
do you mean did I go see? We had the people on the show
It
I was
was-
talking
it was
about.
great, though.
It
You
was
went
great.
too, didn't you?
Yeah, we talked
Is
about
it
Like
still
touching
here?
the iceberg?
I
How
think
much
yes.
weight
A few
was
more
touching
days,
the
yeah.
iceberg?
28 degrees.
Okay,
It's still
fine.
here for a few more days, I think, right?
Okay, now let's
People haven't
talk-
seen it. They should see it.
Okay,
It's great.
good. Let's talk about you going to Broadway, which you do fairly regularly. And ordinarily, the sound bites we play for the plays you've seen are meaningless. This one is meaningless but great. Here's a clip of the song Dead from the original Broadway cast recording, and this is great, of Dead Outlaw. Here's a clip.
Brother's dead, and so are you. Abe Lincoln's dead, Frank James dead. Your mama's dead, and so are you, and so are you.
I have no idea what that means, but I love it.
This is
What's
such
it about?
a fun show.
It
It's
is?
about a dead outlaw, and this is a true, absolutely demented story about
A true story?
It's a true story about this outlaw. We start in 1911 in Oklahoma, and he's just not a great guy, Elmer McCurdy. But he's kind of a bumbling outlaw. He's supposed to be breaking into safes, but he can't break into the safe, or he explodes it and all the silver melts into one blob, so it's useless, or he robs the wrong train. Well, ultimately he dies, thus the title Dead Outlaw. And his body is taken, and then for the next however many years, 60 years until 1976, his body is used for all manner of things, to be a prop in a film, basically, as a sideshow attraction. Come see the dead outlaw. He was embalmed with arsenic. Again, this is a true story, until finally his body ends up as an amusement park prop, and a film crew for the $6 Million Man in the mid-1970s comes across this, what they think is a prop, until his arm breaks off and they realize there was bone and musculature. This is a true story.
Oh, that is great. God.
They sell these great sweatshirts after the show, Get Rich or Try Dying, because he becomes more famous ultimately by having this happen to him. So this has now been, by the way, we're talking about all of this because the Tonys are this Sunday, and this is a very highly nominated Tony-nominated show, 7 Tony nominations. And the music is by David Yazbek, who did The Band's Visit. The director is David Croman, who also did The Band's Visit, also doing the George Clooney show right now. Here's one of the most extraordinary things. Andrew Durand, nominated for Best Actor, also studied at Boston Conservatory. In his very early days, was at a few Speakeasy Stage Company shows. So he plays the outlaw for the first half, and then he plays the dead outlaw basically for the second half. And in the second half, he stands in a coffin, and he has to be dead. And he's on stage for pretty much that entire time.
Oh my God.
And I watched him. Of course, it's like a trick. You watch him. I didn't see an Adam's apple move. I didn't see him blink. I didn't see him breathe. He's extraordinary, the discipline he has to be in this coffin on stage.
That's because your brother's dead, Abe Lincoln's dead, Frank James is dead, etc. It's called Dead Outlaw at the Long Acre Theater. You know what I learned, speaking of the Tonys, this morning?
What?
There were a couple of musicals that are complaining. They were not nominated for Best Musical. They're complaining because some I know you know this, I didn't, unnominated plays get to perform on the broadcast, which is obviously, great for their business. Can I have a paper towel? I just spilled a seltzer, if you don't mind. Thank you. But what I didn't know, I always thought, boy, what a bonus for a play. You have to pay $300,000. If they choose you to perform, you got to pay the Tonys $300,000.
Jim, you broke the screen.
Oh, I did? Oh, because the seltzer? I just spilled a can of seltzer.
You're so excited about theater.
Yeah.
There it comes.
It came back. Okay, thank you very much. That would be a problem.
No, this has never made sense to me because, of course, the Tonys are broadcast and they.
Thank you.
You get all of this exposure, but you have to. It's basically pay to play. You have to pay for this exposure because being on the Tonys obviously gets a lot of people excited. They want to run down to Broadway and go see the show. But yeah, you have to pay $300,000. But shows like Betty Boop are really irritated right now because they stepped forward. They said, "We'd love to pay this money and be featured on the show," and somebody affiliated with the broadcast said no.
Oh.
Okay, just because we're short on time, I want to go just make sure we can sneak in Sunset Boulevard because this sounds really great. We have sound of the star, Nicole Scherzinger.
Say that again, please.
Scherzinger.
Exactly. Thank
performing As If We Never Said Goodbye from the 2024 Broadway cast, recording Sunset Boulevard. This, of course, is about an aging star and her gigolo boyfriend. Here it is.
That's pretty great, I have to admit.
Yeah.
That is really pretty great.
So I will say this is one of the greatest performances I've ever seen.
Really?
Yeah. Absolutely. I was not prepared for this either. I was keen to see it. I'd heard good things. I was very fortunate. I just did Boston Speaker Series with Andrew Lloyd Webber, who wrote the music for this show, and he talked about it, so I thought, well, I'll have to get down and see it. And this was a huge hit in the West End. Now it's transferred to Broadway. Again, a whole bunch of Tony nominations. I think it'll win quite a few. But this is not the traditional production that we've known of Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah, the Gloria Swanson, the famous film.
Right, so there's a black and white film about the actress who's living at home with her strange butler, and this young, struggling screenwriter shows up on the scene and says, you used to be famous. Well, I am big. It's the pictures that got small.
Yeah.
Well, she's big on this stage because Jamie Lloyd, this really inventive director, pretty much everything I've seen of his has been extraordinary. He has distilled this to black and white, which is a great nod to the film. So everything, on
the stage it's all black and white?
All this, there's practically no setting.
Oh, that's pretty great.
Lots of mist, so it brings in gray.
That's great.
And then you have black and white costumes, and then this giant screen. So she's blown up in this big way. So you're seeing these tremendous performances, but then also really blown up. So Nicole Scherzinger, fantastic. Tom Francis, this young man in his 20s, has been cast to play Joe Gillis, the struggling screenwriter, right, who shows up and finds himself in this demented world of hers. Talk about, as I just talked about with Dead Outlaw, the most extraordinary things that happen. The second act begins. I feel like I can talk about this because much has been written about it. He sings the title song, Sunset Boulevard, basically about how she is resonating in Hollywood. The second act begins with us watching the screen, and he's walking down 7 flights in the theater. That's not even the most extraordinary part.
How can that happen?
Then he leaves the theater, and he does that whole first number, walking around the theater, walking down, I forget what street, I think it's 52nd Street, or maybe it's a little bit lower than that, then down Schubert Alley, because he's nodding to the signs for Sunset Boulevard, and we're seeing her, and it's so incredibly meta. So if you're in New York and you don't have time to see the show, at least figure out when the second act begins, because you can be on the street and see this man doing the second act number, and a camera is following him the entire time. So we're watching in the theater, and then he re-enters the theater. It was extraordinary. And you have to realize just has an earpiece, so he has to be listening to the orchestra. That's the only way he can do this and keep in time. It's magical.
You know, since you both mentioned the movie, 1950, the movie, Gloria Swanson playing Norma Desmond, our team pulled this one line that's one of the great lines ever in movies. Here again is Gloria Swanson as Norma Desmond in the 1950 film Sunset Boulevard.
You see, this is my life. It always will be. There's nothing else. Just us. And the cameras. And those wonderful people out there in the dark. All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
How great is that? All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up. Oh, my God.
Movie.
And we have to do the context that this is all happening in her head. This isn't really happening to her. Can I tell you one of the great stories?
Oh, yes.
This is what makes New York so rich, is that I was seated next to Rita Moreno.
Oh, my God.
And I had actually done speaker series with her, so I reintroduced myself. We had a conversation. She had starred, I didn't realize this, she had starred in Sunset Boulevard in London. So here she is, movie star, Oscar winner, starred in the role, watching it was fabulous. And she was so delightful, so fun, and it was really wonderful. It was fun to watch people walk by this theater and movie legend.
And people who don't know, she was in the original West Side Story playing Maria, and she's had this spectacular career after that. And she was in Boston.
The Pops a few years ago, yeah.
In Boston a few years ago at a lot of these.
Can I say one thing before we leave? Another, speaking of plays, it's a local play that 2 of us have seen. You're going to see tonight, The Light in the Piazza. And speaking of music, 2 of the 3 leads, the 2 young lovers, are going to be with us live on the show.
I'm so excited.
To not only talk, but perform on Friday. They are spectacular. Come to the library and you'll check
here in 89.7 at 2 p.m. And for our friends in Western Mass, they can get their dose of Jared and Company Saturdays at 7 p.m. on 88.5 NEPM. Thanks, Jared. The show ends at NEPM right now. We say goodbye to them. Thank you so much for tuning in. Coming up at 3 o'clock, though, the fabulous 413 on NEPM. Monty and Khalees talk with the folks at the Queer Joy Collaborative out of Northampton, so tune in for that. BPR continues here in Boston after the new news with Harvard national security expert Juliette Kayyem, a panel on local aid to Ukraine, and will be joined by 2 local Muslim and Palestinian-owned bakeries. I am Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Brady. This is Boston Public Radio, GBH, live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Boston Ballet, presenting Romeo et Juliette, a fresh take on Shakespeare's timeless tale with breathtaking choreography and live music by the Boston Ballet Orchestra. On stage now through June 8th. Official tickets at bostonballet.org. Anytime you're looking to learn something new about the cosmos, or just need a little space, GBH is in your orbit. Start streaming Nova and all your other favorite programs now on the PBS app.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 2 of Boston Public Radio, live from the BPL. We'll speak with Harvard national security expert Juliette Kayyem, who just published a piece in The Atlantic about Sunday's hate-fueled attack on Jews in Boulder, Colorado, plus her thoughts on Trump's call to clawback funding for life-saving foreign aid and for NPR and PBS.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then we'll talk with two people from New Hampshire trying to make a difference for Ukrainians fighting a long war against Russian aggression. Alan Himmer leads the Ukraine Crisis Aid Group, and Susan Mathison is co-founder of the New Hampshire-based Common Man for Ukraine. All that, plus our Two More Things segment, that's next on the second hour of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. Tariffs on U.S. imports of steel and aluminum doubled today. The White House says the higher levies will help the U.S. economy and protect jobs in the steel industry. NPR's Scott Horsley reports economists argue they'll raise prices on everything from vehicles to consumer goods.
President Trump signed an executive order boosting the tax on imported steel and aluminum from 25% to 50%, making good on a pledge he issued last week while visiting a steel mill outside Pittsburgh. Trump says the higher tariffs will help to protect the domestic steel and aluminum industries. History shows it will also raise prices for the much more numerous businesses that use those metals. The 50% import taxes could have far-reaching effects on the cost of everything from automobiles to beer cans. The tariffs are authorized under a 1962 law designed to protect national security. That's different from the 1977 law Trump has relied on for many of his other tariffs, which is at the center of an ongoing court battle. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
The Trump administration wants to limit how long people can get federal rental assistance. NPR's Jennifer Ludden reports the housing agency is writing a rule that would also allow work requirements.
The rule could be proposed by this fall, according to an internal document seen by NPR. It would expand policies that right now only a few local housing authorities have the power to enact. It's part of a broader push to promote self-sufficiency, though critics say there's little evidence these policies do that. Tacoma Housing Authority in Washington state recently ended its time limits. Executive Director April Black says tenants' wages could not keep up with skyrocketing rents.
There was no way that we were going to exit people from a program knowing that they would become homeless.
Expanding time limits and work requirements without going through Congress could also face a legal challenge. Jennifer Ludden, NPR News.
Today marks the 36th anniversary of the fatal crackdown on democracy protesters in Beijing's Tiananmen Square. NPR's Emily Fang reports the Chinese government lodged complaints with the U.S. Embassy in Beijing over remarks made by Secretary of State Marco Rubio about the attack.
Rubio said the Chinese Communist Party, quote, tries to censor the facts and praised the bravery of demonstrators in 1989. China's official count of those killed in the military response to the 1989 protests is 241 people, but other estimates are in the thousands. Residents in Hong Kong reported increased police presence on the streets in the lead-up to the June 4th anniversary, though tough national security laws imposed since 2020 now dissuade what used to be huge commemoration events in Hong Kong. Emily Fang, NPR News.
This is NPR News in Washington. A new report estimates that having a loved one in prison or jail costs families across the country a collective $350 billion each year. NPR's Meg Anderson reports the research aims to capture the hidden costs of incarceration.
The advocacy organization Forward.us surveyed more than 1,600 people to try to capture the wide range of costs when a family member is sent to prison. Families pay for emails and phone calls to their loved ones. They travel to visit them and send what they can for the commissary. And they lose income, too, from the person behind bars and when other family members have to cut hours to care for children. Zoe Towns is the organization's executive director.
That's a lot of money, I think, for anybody. I think it's important to understand that it's actually falling on those families that can least afford it.
The report comes at a time when incarceration rates across the country are creeping back upward after more than a decade of decline. Meg Anderson, NPR News.
Smoke from wildfires burning across central Canada is drifting into parts of the northern U.S., triggering air quality alerts from Montana to Michigan. Officials are urging people, especially those with breathing problems, to limit outdoor activity. Schools in some areas have canceled recess, and cities are opening clean air shelters. Wildfire season is just beginning, but smoke is already stretching across the border, and health officials say this could be the new normal. On Wall Street, the Dow up 14 points. This is NPR.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance with Snapshot, which monitors safe driving habits to determine a personalized rate at Progressive.com, not available in California or from all agents. This is NPR.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy, thank you very much. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back here on Friday, Live Music Friday. Jim mentioned this before with these phenomenal performers from the Huntington production of The Light and the Piazza. They're going to sing for us, and as you said, their voices are spectacular.
You cannot imagine how beautiful this music is.
Yeah, I'm going tonight. I'm so
Fabulous.
excited. Ask the Mayor. Michelle Wu is going to be with us June 17th, 1 to 2, and the Governor Maura Healey will be with us June 25th from 11 to noon. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. We're joined now live at the library by Juliette Kayyem. She's a former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under Barack Obama.
Little rift between the president and Elon Musk, who has totally trashed the president's bill, calling it just a total disaster, the big beautiful bill, as Trump calls it, and he said Musk has said it's disgusting and horrific. What do you make of this?
It's interesting. Well, I mean, we all know now Musk is out of government. He got what he wanted, which is the number of investigations against his companies and the kinds of contracts he wanted seemed to go through very quickly. He then leaves, and he's out 3-4 days, and now goes after this what Trump calls a big beautiful bill. Let's call it what it is, which is just an appropriations bill or appropriations
and the
proposal.
biggest wealth transfer in American history.
Exactly, and cuts to Medicaid and Medicare. There's a lot of senators who are voicing concerns. I'm assuming that means that they're up for negotiation, including Thune himself, the Senate Majority Leader, but others on different issues. Some have concerns about the healthcare stuff. Some have concerns about the deficit. And so Trump has gone after them. But after Elon Musk's tweets yesterday, which got sort of progressively sort of more Elon-esque by the end of the day, where he's engaging people and sort of expressing his disgust with it, Donald Trump has said nothing about Elon Musk. And I think that's interesting. I think he just finds the Republican senators as easier targets. He doesn't need anything from them, or he thinks he doesn't need anything from them. And Elon Musk, he wants to keep close because...
Well, he's got X, isn't that why?
Well, not just because he has X,
and the money.
but also, he's got the money. And Elon Musk at various moments has said he doesn't want to be so in politics. Part of that is his boards are now expressing concern about obviously his companies, but also primaries for House members and Senate members. People will remember that before Elon Musk had Trump's backing to suggest that he was going to support primary challenges to Republicans if they didn't fall into line with Trump. And now you wonder, whether Trump is afraid that he might support Republican primary candidates against those who do support Trump. I don't think so.
Well, here, let me. We have to give this much more. This is huge, in my opinion. For a variety of reasons, including the ferocity of the criticism from Musk. Even though I'm not clear if it's the ketamine talking or I'm serious.
Well,
or if it's Musk talking. Let me read these things.
Disgusting abomination.
Disgusting abomination. Massive. This is all on Twitter. Massive, outrageous, pork-filled. Massively increases an already gigantic budget deficit. The Congressional Budget Office said $2.5 trillion this morning,
which is less than we thought.
It will make America. Oh, well, that's great. It will make America bankrupt. And this gets to your point. We should fire all who betrayed the American people, meaning all the people who voted for this. And now, while Trump is saying nothing, a couple of weaklings, like our favorite, Marjorie Taylor Greene, admits to I never read the bill. Yeah. I didn't know that so-and-so was in it.
Well, she's upset about AI because there was a thing that
you were the first person to
states could not regulate AI for 10 years, which I think is a pretty frightening concept. Yeah. So for once, I'm on her side. And the other guy, Flood, who's another Republican who said he was very upset about the part of the bill that said that you're going to take away the power of judges to hold
contempt
people in contempt, which is another big problem.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, the White House just goes over the fact tellers, like the people who know the facts, and one of them is the Congressional Budget Office, which is run by a Republican. And despite what the press secretary has said, CBO officials and staff members are not allowed to contribute to campaigns. That's how serious the Congress in the past has taken on the CBO. I've never seen a Speaker of the House undermine his own think tank, essentially. It's his own financial assessor. They say it's going to be close to add $3 trillion to the deficit. So they come out, both the press secretary, the Speaker of the House, even Trump, and just say, well, it's not going to impact X, Y, or Z, and the CBO is wrong or it's partisan, but they're not steering you to any numbers that anyone has, right? They're just saying, well, trust us. Well, there's a lot of reasons why not to trust this group, but no one should trust a budget that doesn't have a financial let's just say, summary of what is going to happen. And it's because they are afraid, or they know that the polling on what they want to do, just to your point, the redistribution of wealth, of money to the wealthy from the not wealthy, is the main point of this. And can I just say one more thing?
Sure, of course.
We pass over things so fast. But one day we will wake up. God help us.
I hope so.
And wonder how a white South African on massive amounts of drugs. I mean, that is like the part where I just want everyone to take it, like massive amounts of drugs. He denies it now, but the New York Times had contemporaneous reporting that puts your mind like it's like on a frying pan, and make you feel delusional and all this, that he was 5 feet away, or 5 inches away from the president, and essentially destroyed decades of goodwill, soft power, efforts to protect the American people and protect the United States interests. The idea that it's just like all of a sudden everyone's like, oh yeah, he was totally on drugs. I'm like, okay, wait a second, that one I'm not passing by. And I think you're right to have just every time you mention Elon Musk, mention the drugs.
Well, on the drug thing though, this New York Times story on Sunday talked about how, I guess if you take too much ketamine, if you're a habitual daily user, then you have bladder problems, and that's what he was talking about, indicating. What are you laughing at?
I'm laughing because I'm a big fan of Juliette Kayyem, but to say when we look back and see a drug abuser was this close, 5 feet from the president, you didn't finish the sentence. Who is a 34-time found felon
That
who is a
president,
sexual
right.
abuser.
Thank you. It is Trump.
I would say that may be a
It is
little
Trump.
more incredible
Yeah, no,
than
it is.
the fact that the richest
totally-
man in the world abuses
I totally
drugs.
did the thing that we see on the media, which is whatever is wrong, you blame that person and not Trump. You're exactly right.
But that's a big deal, though.
Can you
That is a
add
big
white
deal
South
drug.
African to that too?
Okay, fine,
thank
we
you.
can do that.
I disagree with you. I think that's a big deal drug.
I didn't say it's not a big deal
He's saying,
drug.
is it like, why do we not put Trump at the center of these headlines? Like Trump's key advisor and
Exactly.
destroyer of lots of what's good in America is a massively drugged out, what is he? Billionaire, gazillionaire.
Okay, so can we stay with legislative stuff for a second? When you were filling in the other day for Marjorie,
Brilliantly,
we had a
as
very
I
good friend of
understand
yours
from
on.
Jim.
A good friend of yours who's most recently the former ambassador from the United States to China, Nick Burns, who's been in and out of diplomacy for 45 years. He's spectacular. Hopefully he'll be with us more often. And we were talking about a former colleague of both of yours at the Kennedy School, Joe Nye, who recently died, who invented the notion of soft power. And for those who don't know it, it's things like USAID, things like that, contributing to other governments in an attempt to have the people in those countries and their governments feel kindly towards us. Well, one of the best examples of that, in my opinion, besides the wonderful good it did, a measure that was initiated by George W. Bush, I think conservatively, has saved tens of millions of lives. It's called PEPFAR. And it essentially is AIDS relief around the world. Millions and millions, tens of millions of lives have been saved. And there's a bill that was filed yesterday by Donald Trump that includes two major things. $8 billion in cuts to foreign aid, including ending this PEPFAR program, which is so savage, it's incredible. And the smaller cut in that $9 billion cut, which the legislature, for rules purposes, only has 45 days to act on, would eliminate 100% of the funding for PBS and NPR. We'll speak about our parent companies in a second. Talk about PEPFAR for a minute and how critical this has been to the world.
And people who don't remember, younger people who are listening who don't remember, I mean, AIDS was an epidemic throughout the world. It took a while to identify, but it is now manageable. One could live a long time, and it is it's not curable, but people can live with AIDS with the proper treatment. So you focus on education so people don't get it, but then you focus on managing treatment so people can survive. This effort, once the medicine became available, this effort was extended by George W. Bush throughout the world, in particular Africa, and has been, I mean, really, you just, like you say, okay, here's the money, here's the life saved, right? Like, it's like a direct line, and has had bipartisan support throughout the world, and then to the
and in the United States,
and in the
by
United
the way,
States,
yes.
and to start, and actually some Republican senators said this is a no-go, like there's no way we're going to get rid of this. The reason why it's, to your point about China and soft power and Joe Nye and Ambassador Burns, is this is a goodwill effort that also is good. In other words, just saving lives, and has engendered a lot of support for the United States for other interests, for military, for economic, whatever. Look, we benefit from these countries' openness to us for a variety of reasons, including counterterrorism efforts, which exist in Africa. And so you can't really dismantle one piece and think that, this is always my point with Trump. He doesn't realize other countries have agency. So if you dismantle an important piece, other countries are going to react. In particular, China is going to fill in the gap of soft power. We already saw it. There was an amazing thing on X yesterday where a U.S. scientist, immigrant scientist, he's lost all of his funding, tweets that he lost all of his funding. I don't want to say he might be, I don't know if he was a Nobel Prize winner, but very well known. And then says after that tweet that the Chinese said, you pick a city, you pick a lab, and we'll have
blank
you here.
check.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. So that's the first piece of this that we're just not contemplating. I want to just say on the tactics by the Trump administration, one of the reasons why they're doing this now, even though a lot of this has been dismantled by DOJ, is because the court cases, Trump is not only facing lots of court cases, he's losing lots of court cases. And part of it is because none of this is going through the appropriations process. So it looks like Trump's lawyers are now going back and saying, look, we're losing these cases. If you actually want to do this, PBS PBS, NPR, AIDS relief. We've got to get the appropriators to approve it. So in a weird way, this is step 2 of the dismantling, because of so much of what Doge did is not holding up in court.
Can we just say, I'm always uncomfortable about speaking about our own survival. I don't mean us, but I mean the institution. That's why we shouldn't be, because
you shouldn't be.
I know you did. We're a small piece of this huge and important thing. But if you care about what PBS and NPR do here and around the country, the beauty of the president's proposal is it's going to come to an end in 45 days. I don't understand the rule, but there's a clock ticking, and if it isn't voted on affirmatively in 45 days, it dies. And the significance of that is because most of us don't have an attention span long enough to follow things forever. I would say, I hate to be optimistic about anything, but if this is defeated in the next 45 days, I don't think the Trump administration is going to want to come back for a second defeat. So this is critical. And
this is an
let me just say, the head of NPR is quoted as saying, this rescission proposal, the Trump filing, is the most serious threat ever faced by public broadcasting. So if you care about what PBS and NPR do locally, nationally, in your community, now's the time to call your legislator.
Since I don't feel uncomfortable, if I could just add to that. I mean, obviously we're not in pledge, whatever, but everyone's always asking like what they can do if you benefit from NPR, GBH, PBS, they are in trouble. This is serious, because the fact that the White House came out first with this effort, they view it as a cultural war. I want to get to that in a second, but it means that they are prioritizing it. On the culture war, look, GBH has an audience. We know what our audience is. We're not a red state. It's more progressive than not. It wants to hear a diversity of viewpoints, but there's also viewpoints that don't have a large constituency that are also heard on GBH. But throughout the country, the people who are going to be impacted are people who get their news are mostly in agrarian and red areas. And I do think there's going to be pushback for that. Each local NPR satisfies its audience's needs, but the overall NPR effort is one that satisfies, I think, America's needs. And I'm a fan of both. So.
Juliette, thank you for that. I just want to mention there's apparently a U.S. Navy physician in the audience right here that worked for USAID and PEPFAR, who says it did great good.
Is that you?
Is it still?
Well, we really are
thrilled
to have
so
you.
Much. Oh, I saw you waving. Thank you.
Thank you.
So good. And then this is like the thing, like people think, it's like I don't mean to make a stereotype of the military, but like the interagency whole of government aspects that really support it, because the security benefits of PEPFAR, because if these countries fall apart, that's a chaos that often comes to us to manage. So it was preventative military efforts. Thanks you. He's nodding. And thank you for your service.
We're really glad you're here. And thanks, sir. I'm glad you acknowledge your presence to us. Let me just say one more thing. I hate to be optimistic twice in the same show. My fear about the funding for NPR and PBS was it was going to be in a huge budget bill, and even though enough Republicans would want it to stand, they wouldn't vote against the whole bill. The beauty of what Trump is doing, almost everything in this bill is something that matters to semi-normal people. Enough. Hopefully all the Democrats, a handful of Republicans. I find it hard to believe that there are not still enough Republicans who care about this PEPFAR thing that say we're not going to abandon millions of people around the world and give them a death sentence, essentially.
And also
without a George W. Bush, not some left-wing plan.
And also, because of the vacuum that's being created for China to walk into. It's just like, this is the whole thing. It's like, you got people who support this Trump policy. It's like, we exit. We're not in the Cold War. We exit. Lots of countries have agency and are going to fill that, right? It's not like if we go away, nothing happens. Everyone's going to respond. And we're seeing this with the tariffs. We're seeing it with the trade. We are making ourselves irrelevant. And that's, I think, purposefully.
What's also scary to me? I mean, except for RFK Jr., most people think that getting a COVID vaccine was a good idea.
Yeah.
And remember, the other countries had less effective COVID vaccines. Other countries did.
That's right.
So if something terrible happens in the future, say with bird flu, which we just shut down apparently, the research there, we will not be the first. We'll be waiting for some other country to give us their vaccine and have to depend on their goodwill toward us. I mean, we had the COVID vaccine first, the good one, and
the one the one that other countries wanted.
Yeah,
I mean, one
exactly.
of the untold stories, besides how did this virus begin, is that China could not protect its own people with its own vaccine, and we were able to because of that. And then since maybe when we lost, they just pulled out 800 million from Moderna.
600.
Yeah,
600 million from Moderna.
mRNA vaccines.
Which was what the vaccine we all had. Yeah,
we don't like those. Yeah. And Ashish Jha had a great piece in the Globe. He used to be Biden's COVID czar, if you want to call him that. He said that it's a big mistake to be pulling funding from the bird flu vaccine because so far it's only a few people who've had contact with birds, but you just don't know.
Yeah.
And that's pretty scary. But okay.
By the way, Dr. Jha is going to be with us on Monday, June 9th. He's now the head of the School of Public Health at Brown. Can I say one more thing about this PEPFAR program? And people, if
and George
they don't
Bush
know about
was opposed to gay marriage. He was not exactly.
This was because he wasn't about gays.
Exactly.
In 2004. His strategic plan for re-election was to get states to put constitutional amendments against gay marriage on the ballot in the hopes of bringing about voters.
Let
me just say, in terms of PEPFAR, beyond the incredible work it did and the source of it, one of the primary implementers we shouldn't ignore is one of the people I think this country owes a lot to is Anthony Fauci.
Yeah. Somebody just texted that.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, thanks to Dr. Fauci.
In any case, can you, we only have a couple of minutes left. Colorado, you were all over CNN the other day as it was happening. Could you give us the latest on what's going on?
It's a Molotov cocktail.
Yeah, so it's an unlawful immigrant. So and I say that because that is relevant. Was here on an overstay. Seems to have gotten radicalized, but not so out of it or sort of insane that he this wasn't spontaneous. He appears to have watched or monitored a walk sort of for senior citizens mostly senior citizens in Boulder, Colorado, that met every Saturday or Sunday that was basically asserting their First Amendment rights. He decides to attack them in favor of releasing the hostages. A barely controversial issue. He does two things. He does a flamethrower that's followed by Molotov cocktails. We've since learned that there were over a dozen unused Molotov cocktails. So he spent a lot of time getting this terrorist attack together. No one has died, amazingly enough, at least so far. I think 2 people remain in the hospital. He basically sticks around. So much like the DC anti-Semitic attack and the Josh Shapiro anti-Semitic attack, these guys want to be found. So I wrote about sort of this through line on this anti-Semitism, and I've been calling it sort of, intimate performativism. And the reason why I call it that is, one, it's very performative. They want these large gestures, these large moments. They want it on TV. They want to be caught. When they're caught, they say free Gaza, free Palestine. But the other is the particular kind of killing. Josh Shapiro is a little bit different because he is a political figure, but the other two, the diplomats in DC, and then of course what happened in Colorado. One is a hunt. We now learn that he focused on the 2 who were working for the Israeli embassy, and shot them as they tried to get away several times.
Horrible.
And then we're sort of screaming for life, burning. Anyone who knows the history of the Holocaust certainly knows that has a symbolism that can't be denied, and it's a painful, horrible death. And I wanted to give voice to that about what's going on in terms of the anti-Semitism out there, and the fear that's engendering in the Jewish community, and I don't have a good solution because what this is doing, 2 things I guess I would say on the political side of this is it's equating all people who are Jewish with Israeli policy. So so that's like it's something that is a false link, but the other sort of scary thought is they make it sound like it's about Gaza and the Palestinians, and it's not. I mean, it's absolutely not. There's no but behind the sentence of I'm going to kill, diplomats from Israel or go after people in Boulder, Colorado for Gaza. This is all about anti-Semitism, and so I'm very careful not to do the but qualifier. There's no bigger issue here. This is just pure hate.
Well, I want to, you're the expert, and you say I don't have a solution. I don't have a solution. I have a partial solution.
Yeah.
I mentioned this yesterday, but I went home and in an act of masochism, I watched the interview again.
Yeah.
One of our favorite hosts is your colleague Anderson Cooper, but he, I thought, failed to challenge Jonathan Greenblatt,
Yes.
the head of the ADL the other night, Anti-Defamation League, who was talking about the rise in anti-Semitism, which is totally out of control. But when you get to the solution, again, it won't solve the problem. It may ameliorate the problem. Jonathan Greenblatt didn't spend 1 second saying, as horrible as the anti-Semitism is in this country, as horrible as the explosion of anti-Semitism is, we can't forget what's happening to Palestinians every single day. And it seems to me, if at some point the goal is to tamp down these anti-Semitic atrocities, Jewish leaders like Alan Solomon, who's been with us, former ambassador to Spain, should have to speak out about the horror that's happening in Gaza too. And unfortunately, some are unable to do that.
Because a lot of the explosion has come post October 7th.
Yeah,
and I also think obviously the left anti-Semitism coming from those who, as I say, purport to be pro-Palestinian or just to protect those in Gaza, because I don't think they are, and the right-wing anti-Semitism, those are linked. And I'm not saying the left doesn't exist, but I'm saying that the right exists. That's a stew that people who want to condemn it have to face it on both sides. You cannot say, well, the left-wing anti-Semitism, it is part of it is that this is becoming normalized through a culture that invites Holocaust deniers or Nazi sympathizers to dinner at Mar-a-Lago. All of that has to be addressed because this is bad. This is really bad.
Read Juliette's piece in the Atlantic. Juliette Kayyem, it's good to see you.
Thanks
you
so
all.
much.
Appreciate it.
We have been speaking with Juliette Kayyem, former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under President Barack Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. Her latest book, with the best title ever, The Devil Never Sleeps, Learning to Live in an Age of Disasters. Coming up after a quick break, we're going to talk to Susan Mathison and Alan Himmer, the leaders of two incredible New Hampshire-based aid groups benefiting the people of Ukraine, including meeting with widows and orphans in Ukraine and delivering ambulances there that have been destroyed in the war. They're here with us at the library to talk about their work and share stories of resilience and humanity. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Damon Young says the Black American writers he included in his new anthology have a sense of humor unique to their experience as Black Americans.
That sort of clarity, that sort of honesty, that sort of reckoning, the best humor comes from that.
I'm Juana Summers, Young's new anthology on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Dean and Hamilton with Compass Real Estate in Cohasset, a sponsor of the South Shore Art Center's 70th Annual Arts Festival on the Common, June 13th through 15th. Learn more at deanandhamilton.com. And Benchmark Senior Living. Benchmark's Mind and Memory Care program is committed to instilling dignity and independence for residents by offering personalized care plans, working at every resident's pace. Locations and more at benchmarkseniorliving.com.
Welcome back to BPR. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're back at the library on Friday of this week. The Mayor Wu, joins us for an hour on June 17th at the library from 1 to 2. Governor Healy joins us at the library on June 25th, also from, but from 11 to noon. It's been more than 3 years and 3 months since Russia invaded Ukraine, plunged the region into this horrible devastation. As the war rages on and U.S. support, sadly, from both the public and the government wavers under Trump, regular people continue to step up and deliver via direct aid and support on the ground. In April, we spoke with 2 Ukrainian support leaders about shrinking government support here, but on the other hand, the aid flowing from parts of New England. Today, we're joined live at the library by 2 people who are also working to help Ukrainians on the ground there. Susan Mathison is co-founder of Common Man for Ukraine, a volunteer humanitarian and aid operation based out of New Hampshire. Alan Himmer is president of the Ukraine Crisis Aid Group. It's a nonprofit focused on medical aid to Ukraine. They've both been there a lot of times. Susan, Alan, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for joining us. Susan, let's start with you. Just elaborate on what Jim said. What is the Common Man? What do you do?
We provide food, essential, critical humanitarian aid, and trauma counseling to children whose fathers have been killed in the war in Ukraine.
And you've met with widows and the children going over there to Ukraine.
We've hosted more than 1,000 kids through our 3-week trauma counseling centers with Ukrainian kids in Poland. But what we've learned by visiting these children in their home is that their mothers are in terrible crisis. They're living in a war zone. They're trying to support their families. They're wondering what's right for their children. They're dealing with their own grief. And for them to be the best parents they can be, we know we have to provide them with the support we're also providing the children. So in August, we have our first trial of a mother's retreat for widows.
Before we want to delve into the details of that in a minute, because we read some of the stories, including a piece you and a colleague wrote for I think it was the Globe. Why do you do this? I mean, I'm serious. Why did you decide you want to spend part of your life doing this?
The 4 of us have no personal connections to Ukraine, but we're humans. And what we saw when those first train stations were just filled with the crush of humanity, of people panicked, trying to get out. And we saw these mothers holding onto the hands of these little kids and a couple of bags of belongings. We just had to stand up.
Could you describe, I want to stay with you one more minute before we get Alan. Describe the moment when you and your friends, what happened? What was I understand what the spark was, what you saw. Who said what to what? Because this is a major operation.
How did you decide to get in a plane and go over there?
No, I mean, how did you decide to create the whole thing?
It's a great story. People in New England know Alex Ray, who owns the Common Man family of restaurants. He's a good friend. We were having coffee on February 24th, and I said, we have to do something. And he said, the only way we're going to know what Ukrainians really need is to go there. So we should go. And we tied in with the Rotary clubs in Poland and in Ukraine and found out from the ground what was the most needed, and that was services to children. And we gathered our courage and we joined with these Rotarian partners, and we said to ourselves, we have to be as brave as Ukrainians.
By the way, every good decision was made in a restaurant. I want to make that totally clear. So Alan, tell us about the Ukraine Crisis Aid Group.
So the Ukraine Crisis Aid Group focuses on aid to medical institutions, medics, and frontline units that are volunteers helping people in the villages and at the front lines.
How'd this come about? And how, again, same deal. How'd you get involved?
When the war started, when the big war started, we were just shocked and horrified, like most people, and wanted to try to do something.
Who's we?
My wife and I, Megan. And we started to look at opportunities to potentially donate. And then we decided that we were going to fly over and visit. I actually have a couple of third cousins who live in Ukraine. My great-grandparents emigrated to Lawrence, Massachusetts from Ukraine 120 years ago.
Had you ever spoken to those relatives before? Okay.
Never. Nope. Found them, contacted them. We flew over there. We met. And we ended up finding out that amongst this network of very distant relatives and their friends, neighbors, almost everyone there was volunteering for something and giving vast portions of their paychecks to the effort. So we asked them, what do you need? We ended up putting together an Amazon gift registry and had an overwhelming response, shipping things to Ukraine.
On the registry of the things, the needs, and
Everything
you
they
just pick
needed.
them like at a wedding.
Just
kind
like
of
for a
deal.
wedding,
Okay.
right? And then one of the unique things that we found was that people really were worried. Well, what happens with these things? Maybe they'll just be resold.
Yeah.
Maybe that's corruption. So we put in place a chain of custody where everything that gets donated gets photographed at multiple points in the chain all the way to the end user, and then we get those photos back to the people who donate.
Great. Before you describe on the ground work in 1 second, I just want to stay with the background thing. A lot of us care as much as you do about these things. The vast majority of us don't do anything except talk. I don't mean just people who have talk shows. We talk and we bemoan the horrors that exist to people we should care about. You decided to act, and you're probably too humble to answer this question, but give it a go anyway. Starting with you, Alan, what separates you, do you think, from those who care but can't act or don't act, do you think?
I think I had the opportunity to act, that I'm retired.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And I had the means in terms of I can speak Russian and Polish and passable Ukrainian, so I could act on the ground and interact with the people there in their language.
Okay. How about you, Susan? What do you think?
I happen to be a widow, and I raised 2 children on my own from when they were very young.
Okay.
I knew those mothers and those kids needed help, and I knew that the community, the world community in this case, could hold them up.
That's Susan Mathison. She's the co-founder of Common Man for Ukraine. Alan Himmer is here, president of Ukraine Crisis Aid Group.
You know, Susan, when you think of mothers and children, you think as a mother or father, one of your foremost jobs is to make your children feel safe, which is really hard to do in a war zone. So tell us what you've heard from these widows and what you've heard from these kids about this constant bombardment.
It's unbelievable. Ukrainians are so brave, and they're so committed to winning this war. If you ask a Ukrainian about what will happen, it's never if we win the war, it's when we win the war.
Alan is nodding. If you're not watching the streaming, he's nodding in agreement. Go ahead, Susan.
And in our trauma counseling centers, these children wear their vyshyvanka with pride, and they sing their Ukrainian.
That's a shirt. What is a vyshyvanka?
Yes, a cultural dress.
Okay.
I'm wearing one right now.
Okay.
It's beautiful, actually. It's really
made
great.
in the village that my great-grandmother came from.
That's fabulous. That's great.
Their patriotism is unsurpassed in the world. These children are so committed to their country, to their culture, to their history.
But what do you tell the mothers about how to make their children feel safe? You know, you hear about this in the Blitz in England, you know, where people would be playing, the mothers would be playing chess with the kids down in the basement. And what do they do there? How do you deal with that?
There, they use an Air Alert app on their phone 24/7 to listen to the current bombing and the incoming bombing and warnings, and they decide, shall we go to the bomb shelter or shall we not? We build resilience in these kids that we can't solve this problem, but we can give them coping skills. You've lost your dad, you're living in a war zone, you're worried about your future. What are ways that you can cope with those uncertainties? And so that's what we try to do. We can't solve it for them, but we can give them tools to move forward.
How many times have you been there?
13.
Tell the story about the one little kid who had, I don't want to give it away, but who essentially didn't want to be near a place where her father was laid to rest.
So these trauma counseling sessions are 3 weeks long, and kids come, they're kind of cold and wondering, this is scary, they're in a new country, and because we bring them to Poland to be safe. That's a key part of this, so that they can relax for 3 weeks. And what the mothers reported to us is this young boy would not visit his father's grave, and his father had died 6 months previous to the retreat. And when he returned, he said, I can do it now. I want to go see Dad's
How old was
grave.
this kid?
12.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So,
Alan Himmer, tell us about, first of all, was this from Georgetown? Were you in the Foreign Service? Were you learning the Foreign Service there? Is that why you learned how to speak these languages?
I actually took Russian at Phillips Academy in Andover, Massachusetts.
Oh, okay, okay.
And a large number of our volunteers are classmates of mine. Our board of directors are all volunteer classmates of mine from Andover.
That's great. Why did you take the Russian?
It was 1981. We were in the Cold War, and I felt at the time that it was necessary to understand the language, culture, and history of our main adversary to know whether or not we could counter them or whether we should understand them better and make friends with them.
Boy, do I feel pathetic.
Yeah, that's quite impressive, yeah.
Tell us about your experience.
The ambulances, though. Tell us about the ambulances.
And going there, tell us, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So A lot of people don't realize, but the Russians have destroyed over 600 ambulances in Ukraine so far. And it's not a coincidence. They view ambulances as a target which will help to depopulate and demoralize the population, particularly in the eastern parts. So with our charity, we raised money for 3 ambulances together with a charity in England, Medical Lifelines Ukraine. And in February this year, I drove one of those ambulances from England with a co-driver. One of King Charles's lawyers, actually.
Is that true?
Really?
And we drove out to Ukraine and did a handover with local emergency crews. Now, the second part of that is, while working to donate ambulances to Ukraine, we learned that a large number of these ambulances within about 50 miles of the front lines are being specifically hunted in something called ambulance safari. There are Russian army drone teams that use their drones to go out and hunt ambulances and take them out one at a time. And interestingly and cynically, they have online chat groups where they have a point system and they compare scores. Yeah. So what we've started to do is we found a local engineering group in Ukraine, and we put drone jammers on ambulances to prevent the drones from killing the ambulances.
Let me just say, wait, before you go ahead, because we should have done this earlier. If you want to learn more while we're talking about Alan's group, it's ukrainecrisisAid.org. And Susan's is commonman4FORUkraine.org. I'm sorry, Margaret.
I just want to be clear about why Russians are going after the ambulances. The demoralization, is that the reason?
Yeah, the idea is to depopulate the, let's say, first 50 miles beyond the front lines. By depopulating those, you kill public transport, medical, power grid. If you can wipe those out, people will move away. When they move away, the Russians will find it easier to invade because there'll be less of a support structure, less food, and everything for the Ukrainian defenders.
Well, you're at risk when you're there. But how many times have you been there?
Well, Ukraine overall, about 40 times, including business and such. But during the war, let's see, about 7 or 8 times now.
How much at risk are you starting with you when you're there? Be honest. Don't.
It depends very much where. If you're in the west of Ukraine, then there are air raids almost every night, but the air raids are a nuisance. They disrupt everyone's sleep. They don't kill very many people.
And if you're not in the western
part? If you're in the east, then the hairiest it got was February this year. I had a 152 millimeter artillery shell land about 250, 300 yards away from me. And the blast radius is 200 yards, so pieces of shrapnel were bouncing off of buildings and things around me.
And when that happens, you do what?
Well, first of all, I'm wearing 2 layers of body armor. I got soft body armor and hard plate.
And afterwards, you just go about your business?
And you duck, and you pick up. I was carrying a portable generator for a blood bank at that point. It was one of our donations. And my Ukrainian colleague and I picked it up and got into that basement really quickly.
You had a near miss, too.
Yes, we did.
Did you not? What happened to you?
Yes, we did, near Kherson. We had a bombing that occurred. It landed exactly where we had been about 10 minutes previous. And when we deliver food to these frontline villages where families are waiting by the hundreds for a food delivery, and we drive up and there's bombing happening, you can hear it, the air raid sirens are blaring, there's no time for fear.
No.
There's no time for fear.
So
I admire that.
So, when you came in earlier, Alan, you brought this little patch, and it's got the Ukraine flag colors. And I remember early on when this whole thing happened, we would have people on that were supporting Ukraine, and they come in with little flags and little pins, and there was a tremendous outrage in the United States over this war. To me, we've sort of bailed out. I mean, we all saw what happened between President Trump and President Zelensky in the Oval Office. And do these people feel like we've really just pulled the rug out from underneath, Susan?
They still depend on us. They're still hoping we will stand up and stand by them. And what I can tell you, Common Man for Ukraine receives donations from thousands and thousands of people across the U.S. These are people who are expressing in a loud, clear voice with their donations that ordinary Americans are standing up for ordinary Ukrainians, that we are behind them by and large, and we will continue to stand by them through this war. I can't sit at the negotiation table with any of the peace negotiators, but I can do this. I can raise money in the United States. I can fill a warehouse in Warsaw, and with the help of people all over the United States who can care, I can make a difference for kids. That's what we're going to do.
Do you encounter, I don't know what the proper noun is, concern, apprehension, anger about the fact that the United States appears to be on the verge of abandonment of the Ukrainians, Alan?
The regular Ukrainian people that we meet generally draw a distinction between the American government and the American people. The vast majority of them believe that the American government is currently acting in a way which isn't necessarily consistent with how they understand the American people to be wanting to act. And I think that's a fair approximation of it for majority
but the
of the
bottom
American
line
population.
for them is still a negative bottom line, even if your attitude is Alan and Susan are not aberrational, they're representative of the American people. Well, you do what you do and it's fabulous, but I think we can agree all the philanthropic work in the world can't possibly fill the hole that's created by the decisions of our government.
As Susan said earlier, the fact is the Ukrainians are going to fight on. If the U.S. stops supporting them today, the Ukrainians won't stop fighting. And you could think of it this way. During the American Revolution, if the French had said, we've decided to not support you anymore, would the Patriots have stopped fighting and just given over New England to the British?
What do you think that is in the DNA of a people with that level of courage and commitment to their country? When you see that and feel that?
Once in a century, these people have an opportunity to secure their freedom. And typically in the past, the Russians have managed to suppress that. They see this as that one more opportunity in a century that might not come again. And they want to take advantage of it and ensure that for their children's sake and grandchildren's sake, they will have a free country.
You know, we have only about a minute and a half left, Susan, but I wanted to ask you about the children that have been kidnapped by the Russians and taken to Russia from their families in Ukraine. Do we know what the deal is? I'm not sure I trust Secretary of State Rubio saying that we know, and tell us what's going on there.
We believe that it's a gross underestimation of the 20,000 that's quoted often. We think it's maybe twice that. Our organization does not go into Russia to retrieve children. We have heard stories of families who've had their children taken and they're in desperate search. We support the United States continuing to support that information, to make it available, to continue to search for these children. They deserve nothing less.
Yeah, supposedly the database was eliminated, and now Rubio says it's back.
Yes.
Do we think it's back?
I hope it's back.
Okay.
I read a text we just got from Mike in Boston. These two patriots are making me proud to be an American again, and honestly a bit ashamed of how little I'm able to do. So I assume, and Marjorie will read the websites again in a minute, if people go to those websites, they can find out how to get involved, how to contribute, how to volunteer, how to whatever the hell they choose to do.
One great opportunity on June 18th. We're having a
Your webinar.
We're having
What is that?
June 18th at 2 o'clock. If you can go to our website, commonmanforukraine.org, and register for that free webinar. We'll tell you how we do, what we do. It's miraculous, 4 million pounds of food into a war zone, 700 trucks in and out safely. And also we'll be talking to two of the children from our trauma counseling, Ukrainian children from our trauma counseling
2
center.
o'clock, June 18th, and at your website.
Yes.
We'll give the website. How's the food at Common Man? I'm sorry, but it is who I am.
The food and the
How is it?
fellowship is fantastic.
Oh, you've been there too?
I eat there all the time.
It's great. Congratulations to both of you. We're really glad you're here.
Thank you very much
Thank you for having us here.
Thank you.
Slava Ukraini.
What does that mean?
Means glory to Ukraine. And no Ukrainian will hear it without responding Heroyam Slava, which means actually glory to the heroes.
That's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Thank you very much for coming in. It's been very uplifting to talk to you both. Okay, we've been speaking with Susan Mathison, co-founder of Common Man for Ukraine, volunteer humanitarian operation based out of New Hampshire. I'm going to give you the website twice, commonmanforukraine.org. That's commonmanforukraine.org. Thank you very much, Susan. And Alan Himmer, president of the Ukraine Crisis Aid Group, a nonprofit focused on medical aid to Ukraine. The website there is ukrainecrisisaid.org, ukrainecrisisaid.org. .org, and the aid is spelled AID. It's spelled out.
And the webinar, June 18th, 2 o'clock. Go to your website, Susan, and check it out. Thanks to you both.
Thank you so much again. commonmanforukraine.org and ukrainecrisisaid.org. Thank you very, very much. Coming up, just enough time left for our Two More Things segment. You're listening to BPR and 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Trusted, local news.
Boston city officials are offering their annual summer safety guidance.
GBH News.
Officials are warning drivers to expect significant, potentially hours-long delays.
Here for what matters to you.
Governor Maura Healey says healthcare cuts approved by the U.S. House would have a devastating impact on the Commonwealth if they pass the Senate and are signed into law.
GBH 89.7. Online at gbhnews.org.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its 2025-2026 season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Tipping Point author Malcolm Gladwell, Dr. Anthony Fauci, Ken Burns, and former National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster. BostonSpeakers.org. And Rockland Trust Bank, committed to helping individuals and local businesses work towards their financial goals by providing financial advice and resources. More at rocklandtrust.com. Rockland Trust Bank, where each relationship matters. Member FDIC.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Braude, Marjorie Egan, live at the library. Streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Time for Two More Things, where we shove in even more content before the 1 o'clock news. Marjorie, you go first.
Well, people may remember Mike Lindell. He's the My Pillow guy. A lot of people have My Pillows in their house. He wrote a famous book called What Are the Odds? From Crack Addict to CEO. That was about his ability to be the CEO of this company. Well, he is now facing a trial because he went after Smartmatic, this voting machine, and said that they were the reason that they were faulty and that they were the reason Trump won the election. He insists Trump
the reason
won the
Trump
election.
lost the election, not won the election.
I'm sorry, lost the election. Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
So he was on TV last night being interviewed by this guy, Donnie O'Sullivan, on CNN. And Donnie O'Sullivan says when he's interviewing Lindell, this must be the first trial ever where the jury pool was selected based on what pillow they slept on. And Lindell was out in front of the courthouse doing a promo for his pillows before he went into the courthouse. But I want to just play a little sound from him. This was during the deposition because he's being sued for defamation because the guy that runs, or one of the big guys at Smartmatic, got death threats, had to leave his house and everything when he was gone after by Lindell. So here he is when the attorney for one of the plaintiffs asked Lindell about, quote, lumpy pillow calls from dissatisfied customers.
And I'm not asking about the lumpy pillow calls.
No, they're not lumpy pillows. That's not what they call on. Okay? When you say lumpy pillows, now you're an ass. You got that? You're an ass. Is what you are. No, he's an ass. He's an ambulance chasing ass.
Okay, so Mr. Lindell does not want you to call his pillows pretty lumpy, although I hear from good sources that they might be. So anyway, he's on trial now for defamation. We'll see how he does.
Exactly. Let me just get back to the person we're going to talk about every day until he's free. 18-year-old Marcelo Gomes, people know from Milford, grabbed by ICE the other day, 18 years old. It was by mistake. Plus, he has no record of any kind except being an honor student and a wonderful young man. ICE said they meant to go after his father, who also doesn't have a record. Instead, last night in a beautiful moment, both sides in a volleyball game, both the Taunton players, the opposition, and the players from Milford wore Free Marcelo t-shirts, which is pretty beautiful. And here's a clip from Marcelo Gomes' lawyer, Robin Nice, in which the father, mother, and sibling of Marcelo pleads for his return. Here it is.
Please bring my son back. I miss you, my son. I love you, my son. We love America. Please bring my son back.
And I really miss sleeping with my brother, saying goodnight. I just really miss having him with me. I just want to give him a hug back. When he gets back, I will give him a really big hug. But ICE, please get him out, please.
You know, I said this yesterday, I'll say it again. Every time there's a crisis in the world, people say, can they do? You can do what the people of Milford are doing, and the volleyball players in Taunton and the family of Marcelo are doing. Don't forget him. Continue to campaign for him until he's free. And I just admire all these people. Marcelo Gomes, still in custody somewhere, 18 years old, did nothing wrong except be a wonderful young man in our state.
Okay, Jim, thank you. Coming up after the 1 o'clock news, we're going to hear from two bakery owners owned in their local shops, one in Cambridge, one in Somerville, owned by Palestinian Americans. They join us ahead of Eid, one of the high holidays in the Muslim faith, to talk about food and what is going on, what they've heard from family and friends in Palestine. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
If you made a gift to GBH this year, thank you. Your support keeps this great reporting coming all summer long. So, if you can, please consider making an additional gift by the end of the month, online at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Pro Arte Chamber Orchestra, presenting Serenade for Spring, with works by Elgar, Copeland, Boccherini, and Dvorak. Sunday, June 8th at 3. More information at proarte.org. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked #1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, ahead on Hour 3 of BPR, live from the Boston Public Library. Ahead of the Muslim Feast of Sacrifice holiday, we'll be joined by two local Muslim and Palestinian-owned bakeries. That's Yafa Bakery in Somerville and Andala Coffee in Cambridge.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then we end the show with you, opening phone and text lines to talk anxiety dreams. We've all been there. Shocked awake by that class we think we've missed, or that performance on stage that is going awry because we don't know what we're doing. 877-301-8970. Call or text. Are you the kind of person to try and wring meaning out of every weird nightmare about school, about work? What happens when an orange-tinted elderly man creeps his way into your dreams? Call or text next in the third hour of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. President Trump says he just wrapped up a lengthy call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. In a post on social media, Trump says they discussed a Ukrainian attack on Russia's docked airplanes and various other assaults that have been taking place by both sides. Trump says while the discussion was good, it, quote, wasn't a conversation that will lead to immediate peace. An independent government agency says a massive tax cut and spending package passed by the House will add trillions of dollars to the national deficit. NPR's Claudia Grisales reports Republicans say the plan will result in savings instead.
The Congressional Budget Office says Republican spending bill will add another $2.4 trillion to federal deficits. The agency said the biggest driver of that potential new debt is the extension of a tax cut program in the House-passed bill now before the Senate. This, as the CBO estimates, nearly 11 million Americans would lose health insurance as a result of dramatic cuts to Medicaid to pay for the legislation. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office has come under fire from President Trump and Republicans who claim, without any evidence, the agency is working against them. Claudia Grisales, NPR News.
The U.S. private group distributing food in Gaza is suspending operations. NPR's Carrie Kahn reports the decision comes after 3 deadly shootings near the group's distribution sites this week.
The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, or GHF, says it has paused food distribution for one day as it works to, quote, update organization and efficiency. On Tuesday, Israel's military says it fired warning shots at, quote, suspects deviating from designated routes to the food distribution, but did not fire into crowds. Eyewitnesses and health officials in Gaza say dozens were killed by Israeli gunfire. GHF just appointed evangelical leader Johnny Moore to its leadership. Moore has defended GHF's Gaza work, posting on social media that reports of deadly shootings were, quote, a lie. Carrie Kahn, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
More people in the U.S. are dealing with air quality issues. NPR's Kristen Wright reports smoke from wildfires burning in Canada is spreading into multiple states.
Environmental officials in Iowa put out a statewide air quality alert, warning that bands of thick smoke from Canada are hanging over the state and elevating levels of unhealthy air. There are also air concerns in the south, not from the Canadian wildfires, but rather the Sahara Desert. Winds are carrying a huge cloud of dust from Africa across the Atlantic and into the Gulf Coast and southeast. Kristen Wright, NPR News.
On Wall Street, the Dow was up 54 points. This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The state's top federal prosecutor is slamming Boston Mayor Michelle Wu for her criticism of ICE operations in the city across Massachusetts. And in a video posted to social media today, U.S. Attorney Leah Foley blasted Wu for referring to federal immigration agents as secret police in an interview at the WBUR festival over the weekend.
There are no secret police. ICE agents, along with other federal law enforcement partners, are making immigration arrests. That is no secret. They are arresting individuals who are here illegally, which is a violation of federal law. Every enforcement action is conducted within the bounds of the Constitution and our laws.
Foley also defended federal agents' use of masks during operations, claiming some agents who've been identified have faced threats to themselves and their families. Mayor Wu did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Fenway Sports Group moving forward with the first phase of a massive redevelopment project around Fenway Park. And if it happens, well, the view from the Green Monster will never be the same. The Globe reports that a new 7-story office building on Lansdowne Street that could serve as a headquarters for both the Red Sox and their ownership group would take over the 2-story parking garage where home run balls are often hit. The 250,000-square-foot office building would be sandwiched between Fenway Park's Green Monster and the Mass Pike, and also between the Cask and Flagon and the House of Blues. We're at 82 degrees in Boston right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include BetterHelp, committed to helping clients with issues ranging from relationship challenges and goal setting to grief and depression. Learn more at betterhelp.com/public. This is NPR.
Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are broadcasting live. Thank you from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be back here on Friday with fantastic live music with 2 performers from the Huntington's production of The Light on the Piazza. The music is there. Jim's already seen the play. I'm seeing it
They're
tonight.
They're going to sing, too. They are
phenomenal. Mayor Wu, the mayor of Boston, will be with us June 17th, and Maura Healey, the governor, will be here June 25th. Hello again, Jim.
We screwed up when we were talking to Susan and Alan a couple of minutes ago from those 2 local organizations helping the people of Ukraine. Susan brought a couple of paintings that were done, one by an 11-year-old, one by a 12-year-old, children in Ukraine who had lost their fathers to this demented, sadistic war on the part of Russia. And these kids gave Susan and her colleague these beautiful paintings, and Susan was nice enough to give them to the show, so we will display them prominently. And Susan, thank you so much. So we start with last half hour, we talked to people, local people, who care deeply about what's happening in one part of the world where there's a lot of pain. We're about to talk to 2 people who have a similar experience with another part of the world that is suffering immense amounts of pain. Joined at the library desk by Abdulla Awad. He's founder and owner of Somerville's Yafa Bakery, one of my daughter's favorite places on the planet, by the way. And Sami Herbawi, who is the owner of Andala Coffee House in Cambridge, which I've been to about 100 times. They're both Palestinian, hailing from Jerusalem. Join us on the eve of Eid al-Adha. Did I pronounce it? Eid al-Adha.
Al-Adha.
Okay, I'm not going to do it. You did it perfectly. To discuss their businesses rooted in their Palestinian identity and how Palestinians around the world honor the holiday while the war rages on in Gaza. Abdulla, Sami, we really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks
for having us.
During the break, during the news, I was scarfing down all your wonderful food. So let's start with you, Sami. What did I just eat? Tell us about that and what else you sell at your place.
This is basically hummus, which is very traditional. Everybody in the Middle East eats it now. It's very become popular all over the world.
Yeah.
So it's made with chickpeas, and we make it from scratch. We bring dry chickpeas and we soak it overnight and we cook it. And it's very simple. It's fresh squeezed lemon juice and tahini and salt and very touch of garlic and also extra virgin olive oil.
Yeah, that doesn't taste anything like what I buy at the store. That is extraordinary.
Yeah. Before we go to your colleague here, tell us a little bit about your place also.
Well, Andala has been for almost 25 years in Cambridge.
Central Square.
Central Square, right. And it was the idea to build it for the neighbors and always my idea of having a coffee shop that you used to go to coffee shop, give me coffee to go, and that idea was not in my tradition. In Jerusalem, coffee shop is you sit down and you discuss whatever you discuss and you have coffee and talk. And so that's the idea of having coffee shop in Jerusalem. So I want to copy the same idea and put it in Cambridge. Actually, when people said, give me to go, I resent the idea. I said, sit down and enjoy it.
I love that. I love that. So Abdulla, tell us about Yafa, and then tell us what Marjorie is raving about a couple of minutes ago.
Certainly. Well, thanks for having us.
We're thrilled you're here.
Appreciate it. And I'm very honored actually to hear that your daughter is one of our biggest fans.
And she's a very critical person, I should say.
Yeah,
she's not easy to please.
We'd love to meet her then.
I'll make sure she says hi next time.
So Yafa is located in Somerville, and we've been operating for a little bit now, over 3 years. I know how much you know about the history of Yafa as a city. So Yafa is one of the oldest cities in the world that is 45 minutes northwest of Jerusalem. That's where I'm from. I'm from the old city of Jerusalem. In Arabic, literally means nothing other than the name of the city. Mm-hmm. However, I don't know if you're linguistic or not, but the Arabic language as well as Hebrew, both the roots are coming from the Aramaic language, what Jesus spoke actually during the era. He lived in Palestine. And in the Aramaic language as well as Hebrew, literally means beautiful. Mm. So we named it Yafa to reflect on who we are as Palestinians, what we serve, and who we serve. So it's all about beauty. And that's exactly what we're trying to create in the greater city of Boston and hopefully nationwide, create that and convey the culture and spread kindness and peace.
We want to talk about the culture, but before we do, what is it that we were eating that was both pretty and delicious?
Well, that's why it is beautiful, right?
That's right.
I figured.
It is beautiful.
So currently we offer 3 main categories, sweet, savory, and beverages. We focus on sweet, at least at this stage of our business life. So 85%, give or take, of our portfolio is focused on sweet. What we got today is 5 recipes out of 17 different recipes of baklawas. We've got some very traditional. You started actually with the celebration of Eid al-Adha, which is a fest to celebrate the end of the pilgrimage season. During that Eid, we make what we call ma'moul. If I may maybe just hold those and show you exactly what these are. They're stuffed or filled with any ingredients, but mainly with dates as well as pistachio or even nuts as walnut. That's exactly what we're bringing in today, including the baklava that is a bestseller. Maybe that's one of your daughter's favorite, that has cardamom and cinnamon. So we have our own twist really to modify and create a demand actually in this market.
You mentioned Eid a minute ago. How different is Eid considering what's happening in the world today?
So this Eid, this holiday season carries heavier silence, and with lives that being shattered, not just recently, but even over the whole entire century even. So we, while we are, some of us maybe gather in warmth, others are experiencing and going through unimaginable loss. So we hope for peace that would prevail, some dignity, some humanity for all of us to hopefully enjoy and celebrate Eid the way it should be.
Well, Sami, you were talking about people gathering spot at your bakery or at your coffee shop and food place for people who may also be from Jerusalem or Palestine. That must be even more important now.
Well, what is going on right now in Gaza is a total genocide and a Holocaust, and we don't have Eid. They have not celebrated Eid in the last 3 Eids. And the reason for that, I have a member of my families, I have nephews and nieces, which I lost in 2014, and now they have no homes, no place, no nothing. So it's not really Eid for us anymore. So I just maybe go to the mosque and do the prayer and come back. So we don't celebrate Eid any longer. Some people do, but it's not Eid when you see all the massacres of children and women and men and old and young, and it's happening under the watchful eye of the whole world, and they're not much doing about it except young people, young students who's willing to go out and risk being deported or risk being in jail for saying something that very humane, and to stop the genocide, stop the killing, stop the murdering.
It's not just a risk. In Somerville, as we all know, Ramez Ozder taken away for co-writing a pro-Palestinian op-ed in her student newspaper.
I call it pro-Palestinian, but it's in reality, it's in the end of the day, we're all human beings and we share the same value, the same thing. So if it happened to anybody on earth, I would stand up and do the same thing. But you can't imagine, happening to your own people and your own families and stand still and looking at it. So we're asking the people just to understand and educate themselves, and we appreciate everything is happening. Even my fellow Jewish people who come to the cafe and, send in sympathy and support, and that means a lot to me and means a lot to them. And we share a very common value, which is the human value, and that's very important to understand that.
Well, Abdulla, there's something tragic or ironic about the fact that Eid has to do with Abraham being asked to sacrifice his son by God. Of course, last minute he doesn't do it. But that's for Muslims, that's for Jews in the Torah, that's for Christians in the Old Testament, that so many of these same beliefs are shared by all these three great religions, which are pretty much out of Jerusalem. It's a weird thing, and yet with the fighting that still goes on,
Well, you mentioned the word weird. I don't see that as being strange anymore with this insane world, I guess, that we live in. I know how much time we have, but would love, to share the same or concur with what Sami was saying. We have neighbors and community members, including but not limited to, Jewish as well as Christians, who come and support us. Not just support the business, but support the cause, support humanity, support what's legit, I guess, what humans are all about. I have maybe one specific story, if I may actually share.
Yes.
And I brought this with me, and maybe I want to take some of your time, Sami, if I may. So we import at the bakery. We import a lot of ingredients from back home, and including the popular olive oil, which we get from northern part of Palestine as well as around Jerusalem too. So this particular shipment arrived, and we got an email from our agent saying that your shipment cannot be released. Reason being that they were illegally marked and labeled. And just for you to see or visualize really what I'm, to illustrate. So this came actually from Palestine, and the label literally says product of Palestine.
Oh my gosh.
And the CBP, that is the Custom Border Protection, apparently there's a federal law was signed in, in what time actually, but it does indicate that all of the products should be labeled as either product of the West Bank or product of Israel. And, product of Palestine is no longer exist. Then we say, fine, we adhere to the law, and then we'll change those. But then you still have to prove where those invoices were processed, in which we did. But the ironic thing is that those cannot be entered the country this way, so you have to actually chip them back, change the labels, and enter them back again. Now, as a small business, which is, again, it just doesn't make any sense, but that would incur even more cost. But that's the principle of it, as having us go through this and changing those labels to indicate product of West Bank. It's not going to change my identity as being Palestinian, but to reflect and address maybe some of your questions in terms of, how this Eid, where you mentioned actually Abraham, the Prophet Abraham, and sacrifice and so on. So it's a lot of that happening actually where community members came and support us, not just to purchase this, but even became aware of really what even the things behind the scene that people do not see or read even in the news. They're becoming actually more and more aware of the injustice, I believe, that
I want to seize on what you said about people coming in from the community to support us. Sami, is there a different sort of quality is there a different feel in your customer base since a year and a half ago? Do you see it? How is it different?
Of course, it's big different, and people, they come with mental support and physical support. They give you hugs. They give you. It's very, very moving, and it's very touching. So, and said, we stand with you and we support you.
One of the things, Abdulla, that Margie and I talk about almost all the time, we had 2 days ago, we had a woman from the United Nations who spent much of the last 10 years off and on in Gaza City providing humanitarian aid. We talked about this Israeli military thing with the United States contractors, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which the UN would not support. And by the way, it's shut down in the last 24 hours kind of thing. One of the things that we don't understand is why people can't say they're two horrible things at once. That what happened on October 7th to Jews in Israel was horrible, and what's happening to Palestinians in the tens of thousands in Gaza is unimaginable. It seems like most people in this country feel they have to take one side or the other. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, you really don't have to take any sides other than take the side of humanity. Mm-hmm.
Well, why are so many people unable to do that? Why are so many? They seem to be able to say you can feel the pain of both communities at the same time.
Well, that's entirely up to each one of us and how we perceive things and how we should educate ourselves, I guess. Maybe part of the answer to your question is what you just asked Sami about the clientele. Was it whether that has changed in the past?
Have you felt a change too?
It did change big time.
Yeah.
And I can say that for sure that more of the youth and the youngers are not just becoming actually more clients of us, but aware and educate themselves even more, and you can actually see it in your own eyes worldwide, not just in the U.S.
You know, Sami, I read in a piece from WBUR that you were thinking, hadn't been back to Jerusalem for nearly 40 years, but you'd thought about going back in 1995 when they were under Bill Clinton, the Oslo Accords, but then you ended up not going back. So what happened?
When I came, I brought a suitcase and a few things, and that's all my belonging and some books. So in when the Oslo Accord happened, and I felt Rabin in that time was very serious about peace, and I said, this is the time when people can really understand and live together. Even, I lived in Jerusalem all my life, and I lived with Jews and Christians and Muslims, and we didn't have big issues.
Yeah.
Jerusalem in that time was totally different than Jerusalem today. People lived together and married from each other and dined together and lived neighbors. I mean, we hosted Jewish family in 1936, before I was born, and during the problems in Europe and the war in Europe, when they fled, when nobody would even take them, we took them in our own homes. And usually in Europe, Jews lived in an area where it's called ghetto, and especially for them, when they came to the Arab world, and especially in Palestine, we welcomed them in our own homes, so they lived with us. It wasn't like in their own places. So we lived together very peacefully. And if I tell you the story about my own mother, my mother is named Rosa, and Rosa is not an Arabic name. Mm-hmm. And when I asked, why did you name my mother Rosa? And they said, because of we had a Jewish girl, neighbors, and we loved her, and when your mother was born, we named her Rosa after her. So it was a truly, and you can ask, and I just want to also say about why people can't, understand violence from both sides. Uh-huh. It is, I'm against violence from anywhere. If my own father commit wrong things, I say it's wrong. I don't support wrong stuff. But try to remember the occupation. The occupation is the cause of everything. It's not to be occupied and to be controlled. Think about it. You live in Boston and somebody tells you what to do every day, and they check you every time you go outside the library and come back. So this is totally humiliation, and the people couldn't live. And so we've been basically, especially Gaza. Gaza has been in a large open-air prison, and the whole world knows about that. So it's not like supporting, okay, go and kill Jews or kill Arabs or kill... I don't support killing anybody, but I support people has to be free. In the end of the day, you have to be free as a human being and as a person. And you have to, your life has to move on. Gaza is no longer Gaza. Gaza is totally destroyed. But if you ask the people, do you want to leave? They said, no, we're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's how much they're involved with this. And the whole people who comes to kill them, the second day they will say, okay, we can live together in peace. And they're offering that peace. And I can live with anybody in Palestine. And I always believe in supporting one state. I don't believe in two-state solution because it doesn't make any sense to me, and because the land has already been taken. So the only solution is to have one state where Jews, Muslim, Christian, everybody live equal and in peace and justice. And that's my whole belief in the solution.
We only have a couple of minutes left. You both chose to come here, and you both spent the early part of your life in Jerusalem. The President of the United States not too long ago talked about setting up a resort, throwing out all the Palestinians, creating some sort of a resort. How do you feel about, starting with you quickly, both if we can, with you, Sami, how do you feel about the country that you chose to spend your adult life in 2025, Sami?
It's with all due respect to everybody, love Trump and know Trump very well. He's undecided about anything, and his education is very limited to say how much he has to say stuff. I want to build the Reville, or I want to do something in Gaza. People love the land, and people love to be wherever they are. This is their homes, and it means a lot to them. I'm in Cambridge. I've been more than 43 years in Cambridge, and I love Cambridge equally. If somebody comes to take Cambridge from me, I'm going to fight for it.
So, Abdulla, how do you feel about the country you live in today and how it's treating people in other parts of the world?
Well, I guess during the time that President Trump actually said that, was if you remember, actually, the fire in California.
Mm-hmm.
And my immediate, reaction actually saying, should we actually move everyone from the Southern California to whatever neighborhood that you want it and just replace it as is? It's, maybe the answer to your question is right here, what it says rooted in Palestine.
Yeah.
Sure. We're deeply rooted. We're deeply rooted.
So what do you see happening? Do you think this is do you have any hope for the future of your Palestinian friends and family that's still in Gaza?
I always have hope, and I always believe the best yet to come. And I always believe in my heart that if I don't have that hope, I don't have anything. So I always live in hopes and dreams. Even my dreams always in the old city of Jerusalem. And when I'm walking on the street, they ask me, I see the soldier and they ask me about my ID and I don't have it. So, and I woke up from my nightmare.
Yeah.
So this is, I always believe, in the end of the day, there are decent people in the world to decide that this is wrong and this is not right, and it should be stopped long time ago. It should be stopped maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago. And eventually somebody will come to lead this nation, Jews and Muslims and Christians, in here and there, because I think all the decision of Tel Aviv made in Washington, believe it or not. But so someday I believe somebody will come, and before I even came here, I studied the history of the United States, or the maker of the history of the United States, and about George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, everybody. And I always felt, Lincoln, Kennedy, there's somebody will come along to this nation and lead the people of America to some. I hope so.
Are you hopeful? We have 30 seconds left.
We should be always hopeful, actually. That's you never lose hope in that one. But with one condition, though. We should live with equal rights. Amen. I mean, Sami was saying earlier about, one state, two state, whatever solution is. I don't care what country, what land you want to call it. Can we get equal rights? Can we live in equal rights? So, we started with the Eid celebration. Let's end with this. Maybe may this season actually deepen our compassion, renew our purposes, and hopefully unite our hearts. So
Beautifully said by both of you. You're amazing. And you have two wonderful places. We encourage people to go there, mix and talk and eat and all those kind of things.
Would love for both of you and everyone else who's listening.
We're going to be there. We'll tell people again where to go.
Come and enlighten our space with more beauty.
You're an incredible guy.
Not to go from something very serious, something very not quite so serious. But let me tell you, after eating this food, I'll be there. There's no question.
As long as you have no food allergies and you have a sweet tooth.
I have no allergies and a very big sweet tooth.
Thank you both.
I'll be very happy.
It was a fun pleasure.
Thank you very much for coming. And good luck to your families and friends in Gaza.
We're very honored to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're honored to talk to you. We've been speaking with Abdulla, Awad, founder and owner of Somerville's Yafa Bakery, and Sami Herbawi, who's the owner of Andala Coffee House in Cambridge. Thank you both for coming in.
Great. Thanks to see you.
Coming up after a quick break, Sami was just talking about anxiety dreams. Well, a lot of us have had anxiety dreams. We're going to open the phone and text lines to talk about your dreams. Why do we all seem to have similar anxiety dreams about school, well into adulthood, or performances, or sticking that shot in the basketball court? What do our dreams tell us about our lives? You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, the state's top federal prosecutor is criticizing Boston Mayor Michelle Wu for referring to ICE agents as secret police. The Massachusetts House is getting ready to vote on major reforms to the Cannabis Control Commission. And Damon Young talks about the unique sense of humor that permeates his new anthology of Black American writers. It all starts at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its 2025-2026 season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Dr. Anthony Fauci, Tipping Point author Malcolm Gladwell, Ken Burns, and conservation photographer Christina Mittermeier. bostonspeakers.org. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked #1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. Back here at the BPL on Friday, Live Music Friday. 2 of the 3 leads, the Young Lovers, actually, from Light in the Piazza, which Marjorie's going to see tonight at the Huntington. I saw on Sunday. It is spectacular, and they're going to sing for us. I would be here for that. Mayor will join us here at the library on June 17th, 1 to 2. Before we get to the topic, I am told that we are joined by a couple. Is that you, Elizabeth, in line? That would be Elizabeth over there. Her husband, that would be you, Jeff. They've been married a mere 25 years. And talk about something. When is your 25th anniversary? That is unbelievable. They have chosen to spend their 25th anniversary with us. Oh. I don't know about your judgment. Well, good judgment in spouses, but radio is a whole other deal. Congratulations to both of you. We're really honored to have you, particularly today. Oh, that is pretty amazing. So as high school and college students prepare to graduate and enter the real world this summer, they'll join the ranks of we adults who deal with a 40-plus hour work week. Well, not us. We only work 15 hours. Commuting on the T or highway traffic, attempting to remember to pay bills, and that classic adult task, bolting awake after suffering a feverish anxiety dream. I think every one of us has had the same one or a variation of it, where you're about to take a test, but you have the realization. Do you believe everybody has? You have the realization you didn't study, or maybe you never even showed up for a single class. It seems like all of us had a variation on this. It's called a test anxiety dream, well into adulthood. So we're opening the lines to ask you about your anxiety dreams. If they're really dark, don't call us. But if they're not really dark, give us a buzz or a text at 877-301-8970. Stress dreams, anxiety dreams, and you. Now, I did something very wise, I thought, Marjorie.
What was
I went
that, Jim?
to Freud to see what Freud had to say about anxiety dreams. You ready for this? This is a quote from one of his books. I don't know which one. Anxiety dreams are about a psychosexual excitation in which the anxiety corresponds to repressed libido. What do you have to say about that?
Well, Freud was very interested in
yes, he was.
libido type stuff. You
know?
He
was.
Everybody had penis envy, Jim.
Well, I don't know if this is about
that
penis envy,
millions
but
of women.
Nevertheless, it is psychosexual excitation. By the way, I've had this dream. I would say.
Oh, somebody wants you to translate that statement, psychosexual excitation. Could you translate?
I will be doing that at 2:05 right out on Exeter Street. So you should come down to the library. In all seriousness, I have had this exact dream. I don't know, 100, I don't remember most of our dreams, but those which I do remember, this is the most common one. You get to school, and one of the 2 things I said, either you forgot to study for the test, and it starts in 1 minute, or you forgot to go to the class until the day of the test. You had a similar kind of thing?
I had a lot of them. Well, my mother was a piano teacher, so I played the piano for years, and you perform without music. And my big fear was that I would get up there on the stage that I actually saw happened to somebody once and forget the whole piece.
Oh my God, and what did the person do?
In real life, what happened?
Yeah.
The teacher came out and got her, and she went back, and then later on, they tried to bring her out again.
And she couldn't.
And she couldn't do it a second. It was absolutely awful. So the dreams about getting up there on the stage in front of hundreds of people and forgetting the music is very, 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 very scary. You have the music in front of you, then you're not so scared, but without the music, scary.
Another anxiety dream. We want to know about your anxiety dreams. Come on, be open here. 877-301-8970, including in the New Yorker. You know what's a fairly common anxiety dream? Dreams about Trump.
Yeah.
And I have to say, even though we talk about Trump probably 2.5 hours a day, I've never had a Trump dream, to my knowledge. Have you?
I have not had a Trump dream, but apparently people dream about things like their mother starts dating Donald Trump, and they find that a little bit upsetting. Or they'll have dreams about, somebody had a dream about Trump and Mike Pence interrupting NFL games to fight about the rules of the NFL game. And some have dreams about people collaborating, for lack of a better word, with some of Trump's more dark ideas about how we should live our lives. 877-301-8970 is the number. Do you have the dream about being in a total panic because you get to the classroom and you're sitting there and you haven't studied for the test, you don't know the information, you don't know where the books are, you forgot your pencil, you forgot your pen?
What does it mean? Do you have? I know you're not a dream analyst, but what is it? What is it about?
I think it's about being being humiliated in public. You know, the dream.
How many times have you been humiliated in public in your whole life?
I don't know. I'm sure there have been a few times.
Well, I've had a few times
you know
too,
what a very
but
common
not so
dream
frequent that I should dream about it all the
People
time.
come out of the water and they are naked. That's a big dream. They forget
or you're giving a speech in front of a lot of people, and you forgot to get dressed.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, that's a very common one too. I think it's public or just not being prepared, being unprepared, and feling like you're going to be made a fool of.
You know what explains the naked speech or coming out of the water thing?
The
psychosexual excitation. The anxiety corresponds to repressed libido. I don't even know what that means.
Stephen says his recurring anxiety dream is showing up at a formal event without his dickie.
So it's funny. Okay, let's take a couple calls. Faith in North Andover, you're going to start us off as we discuss anxiety dreams here on BPR. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, guys. Thanks so much for taking my call.
Of course.
So it's so funny you're doing this segment today because my husband greeted me this morning with, once again, he's had this many times, I dreamt again that you were divorcing me, that you were leaving me.
Oh,
I'm like, you're not that lucky. I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me.
That's a good one.
Okay? And I think it always happens to him when he has a little bit of a life-changing thing going on, like changes a job, or we have a kid, or whatever it might be. He dreams that, but this time he dreamt that he bought a second house right near our home, and so he suggested to me in the dream, how about if you just live in that house and I'll live in this house? We'll still be together. I'm like, all right.
Yikes.
And the other dream, which is what I have, and I've had many times, is I'm in high school, maybe I'm going into gym class or whatever, and I'm buck naked.
Yeah, that's a common one. You show up someplace without your clothes on. Faith, that was a great call.
Does the naked one cause anxiety or happiness, Faith? What do you derive from that?
While it's in the dream, it's like, what's the problem? I have no clothes on, so what? Yeah.
Faith, you're a good one. Faith, thanks so much for your call.
Thank you for the
Say
call,
hi to the
Faith.
husband when you see him.
Listen to this one. When I was at RISD, Rhode Island School of Design, I was so stressed about being late for a critique that I sleepwalked and woke up at 4 a.m. in an empty classroom. That is it.
Really?
That is it. Yeah.
You ever how do you say it? Sleptwalk? How do you say it past tense? You ever sleptwalk?
You sleepwalked, I think.
Have you ever done that?
No, I've never done
That's
that.
actually
I've never
pretty
done
scary.
That. You know what?
We had a comedian on. Was it Mike? Berbiglio, who had a real serious problem with that. Did he not? He's from the Cape or from somewhere in Massachusetts.
You know what's
Oh, right. He almost walked out a window, Jamie said, or some such thing. Yeah.
You told me a story about somebody who had a room in their apartment they didn't know about.
Yeah, let's not discuss who it is.
We don't have to go
I
into
did, yes.
details. But I've had that dream where all of a sudden I find an extra room, that I've lived in my house for years. And all
This
of a
was
sudden,
not a dream.
Yours was real life. Maybe that's why I've had the dream, but that's a recurring dream, an extra room in my dream.
So this is not a dream, but I feel since you've mentioned it, I should say. I was visiting an unnamed individual who was living, just gotten married, and the two of them had never had their own place for a variety of reasons I won't bore you with. And they'd lived there about 18 months when I got there, and they were really proud showing the place and to me and the person I was with. This is a long time ago. And I look at a doorknob and I look at the door. I said, what's that lead to? And the woman said, nothing. It's one of those things like in a hotel, it's locked to the next apartment. And so since there was no lock on, I turned it and opened it, and there was another room in their apartment that they didn't know about.
That is one
so
of
I
the
went
most...
to this woman. I can say what her name was Frances. I said to Frances, you have another room in your apartment. To which she responded, I'll remember it to this day. Oh, that was her response. Oh, I had another room. And that was not a dream. That was somebody else's.
Jamie's had the exact dream, finding a whole floor of my house or apartment that I didn't know was there.
You ever heard of that before? I've never heard of that.
I've heard of it because I've had these, sometimes it's one room, sometimes it's a whole bunch of rooms. And I'm so happy to find all these extra rooms. And then, of course, I wake up and they're all gone.
But that's not an anxiety dream. Is that an anxiety dream?
It's not an anxiety dream. No, but a pit musician just said, much like Marjorie, I'm a professional pit musician. I have a recurring dream where I can't get to the orchestra in time, or my instrument doesn't work, or I can't pull up the music on my iPad.
Well, that's a variation on the same dream, right?
That's right.
Let's go to Liz in Maine. You're next. We're theoretically discussing anxiety dreams. Hi there, Liz. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
I have had a variation of the same dream at least a couple of times a week for much of my adult life. And in this dream, I have to go to the bathroom very badly.
Okay.
And every bathroom that I encounter is either overflowing or it's filthy dirty or it's filled and I can't get into the bathroom. So I usually will then wake up and, of course, I have to go to the bathroom. But what I always wonder is if I do find a usable bathroom, would I wet the bed? I mean, that's kind of what I wonder about.
Well, I'm really glad you brought that up with us. Liz, we're not going to discuss that at great length, but we're glad you shared your question with us.
That is a provocative question, though. That's the idea, and I don't know if this is true, that you can never dream that you're dead because you always wake up before you die. Oh, Harriet Heineman from Pennsylvania has just texted. She says, I keep having an anxiety dream about little Jimmy, that maybe someday he'll call me back.
Okay, I'm not going to explain who Harriet Heineman is.
Now, listen to this.
I'm not going to explain who she is.
This is from a texter who says, I was once told, they signed their name, yeah, I was Meredith. I was once told by a counselor that having an anxiety dream is directly related to procrastination. You're putting off something you know you really should do or needs to be done. Your dream is a reflection of this. Now, whenever I have one of those, I haven't brought the book yet, or the test is this afternoon dreams, I think about what am I putting off, and it's usually right there in front of me. That's a good point, Meredith. Thank you very much.
877-301-8897.
A lot of people, Jim,
What?
they get to their high school and they can't open their locker. They forgot the combination, and their French book is in there, or their history book is in there, and they can't get it.
Variation on the same. Isn't that a variation on the same thing? You just can't.
Erin in Duxbury's had many dreams about her teeth falling out. Oh,
That's
no.
That's an anxiety provoking.
She's holding her hand in front of her mouth and she catches all her teeth.
Like chiclets kind of thing?
I guess so.
That's pretty horrible.
Oh, no. Okay.
Fine. Liz in Maine. Did we talk to you? I don't think so. Or did we? I don't know. Liz in Maine. Hi.
Yes, you did.
We did.
You already spoke with me. I'm the bathroom lady.
Oh, well, Liz.
Liz,
that was an excellent call.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for making the call. We
Yeah,
appreciate
the bathroom lady. That was a good one.
That was a good one. Well, yeah.
Okay.
By the way, CNN, national story about Marcelo Gomes and about how both the Taunton kids and the Milford kids in the volleyball game, look at that. They're all wearing the T-shirts, free Marcelo. That's actually pretty beautiful, I should say. And let's hope this kid is freed soon. David in a car, welcome to the show. We're talking about anxiety dreams. I think we are anyway. Welcome.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm a long-time listener and a couple of time caller.
We're glad.
My anxiety dream is that I am aware of the fact that it's hot, humid, good one for today, and I am in a tropical environment, and there's a huge crowd of people, and there's a man on stage, and he's saying, we're all going to drink this Kool-Aid. And I jump up and say, wait, this doesn't make any sense. Don't do this. And the people listen to me, and they say, well, you're making a good argument, David, but we're going to drink the Kool-Aid, and they all drink the Kool-Aid, and I wake up in a cold sweat.
What is like a Jim Jones kind of thing?
Yeah, Jim Jones. That's right.
What's that? Go ahead, David.
And then I try a different argument the next time I have this dream. And I think of your children. Think of how, and they all go, well, that's a good point, but they all drink the Kool-Aid. And every time I've had this dream, I've never been able to convince one person not to drink the Kool-Aid.
Well, there are two interesting things there, if I may. One, that you change your argument, apparently, every time you dream of the same situation, which is quite interesting. And two, you never told us what happens to them after they drink the Kool-Aid. Do you know? Well,
I wake up.
Oh.
I wake up at that point because I'm quite well aware that they're dying. That's where my dream ends every single time. And yes, I must be aware to a certain degree that I am dreaming because I'm using a different argument. I'm thinking, I remember in this, I would be thinking, no, that didn't work last time. Let me try this one.
That is actually,
David,
I've never
that's a
heard
great
anything
one.
like that. That is great. David, thanks for the call.
Mike
Appreciate it.
Birbiglia apparently did walk out of a window, says Robin from Burlington. And listen to this one.
He did?
That's what she says. This is one I've had. In my anxiety dream, I cannot run. It's like I'm trying to run away from somebody who's chasing me or run toward a family member trying to help them, and my feet don't move. It's like I'm stuck. It's slow motion. This person says, I feel like I'm stuck in mud when that happens to me.
Okay,
I can't get my feet on
I'd totally forgotten this. When we were both younger, independently, we didn't know each other. We both run marathons. I ran them faster than Marjorie, and we've proven that repeatedly. I've had the exact same dream, which I'd totally forgotten about. Not in years that I'm aware that I'm at the starting line of some sort of race, marathon or whatever, and I don't know how to make my legs go.
Yeah.
That I'm standing there, and I'm saying to myself, how do you run? What do you do to tell your legs that they have to move? So that's an anxiety provoker too, I would guess.
A lot of people has to do with finding, going to school, finding they can't get in the door, finding the door is locked, finding they don't remember the combination to their locker, find out they don't remember the combination to anything, or they study for the French test and find out it's the history test, and then they're really screwed.
Read the bottom text there.
My anxiety dream is that I go to the Boston Public Library to see BPR, and it is sold out.
That is really anxiety
No
provoking.
tickets, no RSVP needed.
Rich
Kelly?
in Scituate said, if Freud were living today, he'd be an internet porno producer, which is probably true.
I wouldn't be surprised. He had weird fixations.
Oh, you think so?
I think so. Kelly in Hull, thank you for calling.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi, how you doing?
Oh, good.
Good. I have a terrible anxiety dream.
Yeah.
I quit drinking a year ago, and I've worked really hard at maintaining my sobriety. And I have this dream that I'm out at a restaurant with my husband and friends, and I drink, and I got drunk, and I wake up, and I think I've thrown everything away. All my hard work is gone, and no one will speak to me.
Oh.
That's horrible, actually. Have you had that more than once? Have you had that more than once?
I have had it. I guess it's pretty common.
And so what is that? What do you think that one means? We don't know what any of these mean. What do you think that one means?
Well, I think I have a fear of relapse.
Yeah, that's a good one. Fear of relapse. That makes total sense.
Hey, Kelly, thanks for sharing that. We appreciate it.
Listen to this one. My dad owned a seafood restaurant in Rockport when we were growing up. My friends and I worked there. We'd have the recurring dreams that there would be a huge lobster in the restaurant. The lobster could range in size from the normal dinner size to a giant lobster that was teaching classes at school. There was always a lobster present in most of my dreams, and I am a vegetarian now.
So what does that mean, dream analyst?
I have no idea.
You know, just thinking, we've been on the air 26 years. We've had one dream analyst on twice.
Yeah.
Do you remember what she had written books about?
COVID dreams.
COVID dreams.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
That was sort of fascinating.
Yeah, sort of. It was sort of fascinating. 877-301-8097. We're talking about anxiety dreams. Yes.
I had a dream where I had found a whole secret bathroom in my home with a massive tub, but the space had an incredibly low ceiling, like below 4 feet. I had to crawl in. What does that mean, says Jill.
You want to hear the ultimate anxiety dream?
Yep.
Anonymous just texted. I had a dream of having a great liverwurst sandwich, wonderful rye bread, but no Dijon mustard. That is terrifying, I should say, for some of us. Scott and Weymouth, welcome. Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Excellent. What's up?
So in Trump's first term, I used to actually have anxiety dreams that he was invading Canada.
No, you didn't. No.
I did. I seriously did. I swear to God, I did.
So you were ahead of the curve then, because he didn't want to talk about that till his second term. Yeah.
Why'd you think of that?
No, no one believed me. No one believed me.
Yeah. Sort of like a Nostradamus kind of dream there. Scott, thank you very much for the call. Actually, speaking of Trump dreams, can I read the beginning of this New Yorker piece before I go back to the calls? My first Trump dream was in 2015. In it, a friend who was going out of town on business asked her to check on his apartment while he was away. The address he gave led to an apartment on the top floor of a 6-story building where on the sofa, illuminated by the glare of an enormous TV, she said, Donald Trump in a large adult diaper sat sleeping with his chin on his chest. She watched Trump sleep for a while, then filled a large metal dog bowl with kibble, slipped it across the table. When Trump awoke, he began gobbling loudly with his mouth open. Crawford was alternately filled with disgust and then flooded with pity. She ended up buying him a flip phone for emergencies only. And that was the first of many Trump dreams for
Somebody
that
else said
person.
they had a recurring dream of walking down the aisle and they get to the altar and there's Donald Trump and they're married to him in about 2 seconds.
That's a pretty good one.
Listen to this. This is a common one. Matt from New Bedford is one of many that says something like this. I occasionally have anxiety dreams where I'm driving my car from the back seat, trying to control the wheel and the pedals, and the car is out of control.
Can I tell you something? I can't believe this. The running one I've had and forgot about. I've had the exact same one.
That's really
from the back
scary.
seat, and I can't get to the front seat. And all I can do is control the steering wheel and nothing else. What does that mean? Oh, it's obviously an out of control thing, right?
Yeah, I guess.
You know what's not very useful about this conversation? These are interesting dreams. Neither you nor I have any idea why anybody's dreaming these dreams. Is that a problem?
I don't know anything about dreams. All I know is that if I wake up early in the morning, like especially on the weekend.
Today you woke up early.
Yes, today I woke up really early. But
That's
if I
very
wake
sad.
up, like say I wake up on the weekend and it's 5:30 or 6, I think I can go back to sleep.
Yeah.
Between the time I go back to sleep and the time I wake up or whatever it is, 7:38, those are the dreams I remember.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's common to remember
It
the
is?
ones that yes. You may not remember the ones you had in REM sleep, which I read one of these stories. They didn't even discover REM sleep until like the 1950s or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that's when you dream.
This is another one I've had. I can't believe I'm so ill prepared for this. Rebecca in Northborough, my anxiety dream is I'm driving and my brakes don't work. Have you not had that dream?
Yes.
That's
yes.
it? Okay,
yeah,
fine.
there's a lot of people have the teeth falling out one too. This is about the 5th one I've had about teeth falling out. I don't know what to make of that. Sarah,
No, I didn't have that dream. I had a dream that I had 32 implants. Is that the same?
Yeah,
Is that
that
the
would be
same
very
dream?
expensive. I
Also,
think.
it hurt like hell.
Hurt like hell.
It really was expensive
Okay.
and painful.
Sarah in the car, thank you for calling.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
I just had this dream, the same thing where I pump the brakes and the brakes don't work in the car.
Yeah, that's bad.
But what happened to me was I Googled it and it talked about the anxiety and feeling out of control, and I've never had the dream since.
Wait, once you Googled it and figured it out, you never had it again?
Exactly.
Well, that's actually pretty fascinating, is it not? Sarah, thank you for the... Did you ever Google your dreams?
No, I didn't, but I have the same ones over and over.
What took you so long to answer there?
Well, I was trying to think if I ever did any investigation of dreams.
Yeah.
I didn't really do.
Did you ever write a column about dreams?
No.
No. I don't
Well,
think
you
so.
don't know anything about dreams either.
I don't.
I always get a dream expert on here one time.
I think we
to
should have a
interpret-
dream expert.
to interpret these things.
I don't think we're doing
Here's
that.
one. During college, I used to dream that I needed to scream and couldn't, but then I was held up at gunpoint, and yes, I could scream. That's from Lauren Cohasset.
Okay, good. Bernadette in the truck, you're going to close this baby out here. Go ahead. What's your deal?
Oh, hi.
Hi.
So I way back in the day, I worked at a McDonald's, and I was in high school.
Yeah.
And I had a manager who was really sleepy, and like picked me up against the counter like Brooks.
Wait a minute. So the manager that pushed you up against the counter, he was a bad guy, you mean?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He was just
Go ahead.
disgusting. And so I would dream that I was in the storeroom being chased by him, that he was a Big Mac and he was like a Pac-Man. And I would be in this horrible Pac-Man game. Yeah, it was terrifying, actually. And that lobster story is what reminded me, and it came back.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
The lobster everywhere. Thank you for that one.
There are two great
Bernadette.
texts quickly.
Mike,
Read them both.
Mike Lindell texts, last night I dreamt I was eating a giant marshmallow. When I woke up, my pillow was gone.
Exactly. And
And
an
then-
anonymous texter said, I had a dream I got stuck in my seat at Fenway Park. Ha ha. So that happened to me
That
once.
was a recurring tragedy for Jim.
Okay. Is Jared around?
Okay.
I don't
Hi,
see him.
Jared.
Oh, he is. Hi, Jared. How are you?
Hi, Jared.
Fine.
What do you were just here, weren't you? I think you were. It was you.
Yeah.
What are you doing on the show thing?
You don't want to know about my sleepwalking?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yes.
Wait, you sleepwalk?
I was a big sleepwalker right up until college.
And what'd you do about it?
Nothing. I eventually stopped, but I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't sleep over friends' houses without my parents warning them that I would be sleepwalking, and I did invariably every time.
And did you ever get in trouble or hurt yourself or whatever?
No, but one time my father went out for work and he found all my blankets on the front yard. And my mother said, "Did you check and see if he's in his bed?" I had this dream that I was waiting for the bus and it wouldn't come. And it turns
Really?
out I had slept outside.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
That's scary.
That is
Sleepwalking
really
is
scary.
scary.
Well, you know what's scary? You can instruct people and tell them what to do. Because people would always say, just go back to bed. And I would just, like a robot, turn around.
Is that true? I
it's
can't believe
weird.
we didn't know that. That is fascinating.
Anyway.
Okay, what are you
fun?
doing on the show?
We're going to be talking to Nemr, the Lebanese-American comedian who's coming to the Wilbur with his extremely extremist tour and tell us about his experiences doing stand-up all over the world. We'll talk to the Somerville Museum about how Somerville had a huge place in the American Revolution leading up to the 250th next year. And then we'll speak to Mahesh Das about the legacy of Frank Lloyd Wright, because you may have heard that one of his towering structures, his only skyscraper, recently sold.
Oh, really?
Well, that actually sounds... I'm fascinated, but we had to talk more about your sleepwalking tomorrow or whatever or something. Listen to Jared Bowen. That is at 3 minutes from now at 2 o'clock.
Boy, we have so many great texts about the dreams, but I don't have time to read them.
Why don't you read them when we're doing it?
Because I read as many as I could.
Oh, okay.
We ran out of time.
We did.
Anyway, thank you for listening to Boston
Thank
Public
you.
Radio. Thanks to everybody who came down to the Boston
Thank
Public
you. Well,
Library.
happy
Really
anniversary
appreciate
again
that.
to both of you. Enjoy
keep
the rest
up with
of
us
the day.
24/7 by way of our podcast, or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow we're going to be joined by political analyst Chuck Todd. Of course, he was the former host of Meet the Press. Former Massachusetts Public Safety Secretary Andrea Cabral, former Massachusetts Education Secretary Paul Reville, and NPR TV critic Eric Deggans are going to tell us about some great new shows coming out this summer. We want to thank our great crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our engineer, John the Claw Parker, who rescued me yet again today, our executive producer, Jane Bologna. Thanks as well to the BPL staff, Maddie Geyer, Colin Cockrell, Juan Jose Cadena, our host at the Newsfeed Cafe, and across the street at the Lenox Hotel. Stay tuned to the Culture Show with Jared Bowen, which starts right after us here on 89.7 GBH.
And if you have any friends in Western Massachusetts or Connecticut or New York,
yeah, tell them.
Starting Monday to tomorrow is day 4, 11 to noon. We're on NEPM 88.5 in Western Mass. I'm Jim Browdy.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Thanks again for tuning in today. I hope you can tune in tomorrow and have a wonderful afternoon.
See ya.